This is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. And this one, like some past episodes, as you can see on your screen, is brought to you in association with Interz, who make excellent t-shirts and apparel. Like I'm wearing one right now, which is like a print design of like a Japanese, whatever you call it. What is it? What even is that
Pagoda.
called? Pagoda thing. It's like a mix of like, it's trying to do like a bit of like neon, like sci-fi, modern, Akira Japan with like the traditional blending the juxtaposition. Maui's just got like what's that, like a plain white wife beater or something?
I got a little something. I went to Lake Tahoe yesterday, so I was like, all right, let me get something that's fitting for the alpine forest, you know. So,
I know Monty likes to wear the plain ones, like the white one, the black one, the cream, etc. So they have all that jazz.
Some of those too, yeah.
For people who don't know, if you use the link on the screen, intertheam.com/LFN, you already always used to get 10% off. But what's quite cool is they're running a Labor Day sale, which is some American thing, where it goes up to 50% off. It runs until the 9th of September, so you've still got a while. And the cool thing is they actually make our code stack with their deal. So when you get the 50% off, you can also then get 10% off. So you can get 60% off whatever you buy on the store if you use our link, intertheam.com/LFN. They also, by the way, because they make everything stack, everything else that's on offer also applies with these added bonuses. Like, for example, you can get 3 graphic tees like this for $61.95 as a bundle of 3. You can get 3 basic ones for $52.95. And again, if you use our code, you get 10% off. And if you did it during Labor Day, you would presumably get 60% off. So excellent savings. It's actually a company I've thought's pretty cool from the ones I've tried out. They've supported us in the past. Shout out to anyone who chooses to buy from them. Obviously, you get a saving yourself. Right, our episode guest is Flom, who people will know. It's not really that out of left field now, because I did have you on that Feed the Trolls episode, but it's okay. You're gradually being brought into Thorin universe, or whatever I'm going to call that. I'll come up with a better name, like that Kevin Ask universe, or whatever he had for his films. Jane, Silent Bob, Flom, and fucking, I don't know, is Oni Pixel allowed in? Not really. Actually, that's the thing, Maui. At the moment, I don't let Oni Pixel into my universe. I've allowed Donna in as like his herald, and then if she, I don't know, if she does a good job, maybe one day I will allow Oni Pixel to enter this list. But for now, we're gatekeeping him out. He's just a guy talking about drillers on his stream or whatever.
He's gonna force his way in when his
He
team
probably
gets into
will.
the major.
Okay, maybe at that point.
As long as it doesn't end like the Marvel universe, then it'll be all right.
By the way, Flom, one thing I do want to know is when you do your Mythic team and you play on stream, etc., do you actually do that almost like what Olaf Meister and Forrest do, where they just play with that Boomer Stream Demons team, and it's like they don't really think they're ever going to be pros again, but they want to play competitively? Is that your vibe? Would you ever actually, for real, if the team got better or you had like an up-and-coming play, would you actually try and be like semi-pros or be pro again in that team? Is it just for fun for you?
It's just for fun. I always kind of refer to it as like the beer league, basically, for me, which is kind of messed up because also it's the division right below Pro League. But when I started streaming like long, I mean, now I've been doing this for like so long now. I think 10 years. I'm almost at 10 years or something stupid. I just knew I'd get the itch, man. So I started doing this like a long time ago, right? Because you just know, I don't know, anybody that's played CS professionally or competitively, even at a lower level, it's really hard to like turn that off.
Sure.
You know? So knowing that I'd probably not want to turn that off, I was like, well, how do I, have, a little bit of that, but also at the same time, I don't really want to fully go in. There's been different versions of our team where we qualified for a few different events and lands. Funny enough, I played against Team 1. I think Mulps was on that roster way back when at in Burbank at the ESL studios. So like we've had some moments where different versions of the roster were pretty competitive. And when we do qualify for events, I'm always down to do things, but the goal is always to stream first.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, as you say, if anything, that's more of an indictment of the NA competitive scene, that your fucking around beer league just is actually the league where all the talent should be developing and becoming world-class players. So, that's not your fault. You can't be blamed for that. If anything, it's their job. It's like a bit like what Terrell Owens used to say: if you don't like how he celebrates, keep him out of the end zone. So if you don't like Flom doing all this, stop fucking losing to him, you idiots. Actually beat him in CS, and then he won't be able to be in a semi-relevant league, will he? So what can you do at that point?
I have a question. Wait, how much are you guys practicing? Because I've seen it. Sometimes I'll tune in and you guys are, but like, or scrimming at least. But yeah, what's the schedule like there?
Kind of depends. Like this version, we started scrimming a little bit more recently. Just like because being brutally honest, there is actually a lot more competition in North America right now. It's not like so much better. I'm not going to try to sit here and be like, oh my God, it's so back or any. We're definitely not pro league level of North America by any means, but we're also significantly better NA version of what the hell was going on during COVID.
All right. Okay.
And so there's a lot more teams that are giving us a lot more trouble, where before we just straight up were not practicing. We were showing up and we almost made playoff. We did make playoffs last season and we didn't practice. Now playoffs and challengers kind of not that great of an achievement based on how easy they make it for most of the teams. But this season we're getting, it's tough, man. Because, it's like every week you're actually playing, it's like, oh shit, we got NRG this week. Oh crap, it's M80. Oh crap, it's nouns. And they're you actually are running into like a fair amount of, oh crap, it's legacy right now. There's quite a few teams that they're not on the tier 1 international like stage all the time, but they know how to deal with us, you know what I mean? And we've snuck in some wins. I always like to chirp at Mulbs because his 1 negative rating on Mirage was versus me. And I farmed him real quick. And we got it, granted, they had 2 stand-ins, but nobody needs to know that. We snuck one past nouns. But in general, I'd say we practice a little bit more right now, but that's because we've been getting pressed a little bit. And we don't like losing, even though we have been a lot, but we're still doing all right. So we'll hang in there.
Because that is actually the flaw. I know they've tried, obviously, with all those like stream show matches, like at the events before they made the finals of like IEMs and stuff. They always try to force in CS the idea you can have like a fun format or like a legacy format. It just doesn't work. Like what shows that it doesn't work, sadly, is that like I've watched like those Boomer Stream Demon guys, like because they're just way worse than they used to be. And the worst part, the part that ruins the magic is they're losing to nobodies that aren't even good now and won't ever be good. That's the part that doesn't work. It's like the concept, Maui, of why the big 3 doesn't actually work in basketball. The concept's genius. Have them just play a 3-on-3, but with like a retired pro. But it's the same thing. You tune in and you think, right, well, that would work. Yeah, I could watch like what Chauncey Billups get. And it's like, no, what you're going to watch is people like Chauncey Billups get cooked by Mike Beasley. Like he's going to be God compared to them. And it's actually just going to ruin the whole concept. Like that's not what you want. You wanted it to just be a scaled down version of like, the best players of yesteryear, but it doesn't work. So whatever. Anyway, let's get into this episode. So Flom, obviously we always have the guest bring the first point. What is your good point for this episode?
My good point, Apex, just Apex. I think his X factor and his entry, I think literally constantly gets overlooked. And I just really wanted to, I don't know, man. I wanted to talk about it. I want to talk about him, hype him up. I feel like he really, something that is always talked about with Vitality as a team is, Zywoo, playoffs, his inability to take over games. Well, Apex said, fuck it, I'm going to do it myself. And I feel like he showed it in Cologne. Okay. And I mean, say what you want about the guy. He might make some dumb calls here and there. He might just, whatever. He has a lot of flaws for who he is, but you cannot fault that man for how he will literally just go for it. And he went for it in Cologne, and it was so much fun to watch. It was absolutely spectacular to watch. That dude, he really was just him. He created moments for his team where they absolutely needed him to be there, where the other guys don't do it. Spinks likes to fade away because he wants to follow in Apex. Flames wants to entry, but only when he's feeling it. Zywoo is always just going to play the way Zywoo wants to feel, so somebody has to do it. And your IGL entry X Factor Apex got it done, and that's why they look so much better in Cologne.
If you want to even extend that, I mean, it's always, I even think of, say, when MSL won that MVP, sometimes you get these IGL and sort of just a non-sustainable pop-off from an in-game leader as to what drives a victory. And just being honest, they don't win that first map versus Na'Vi if Apex doesn't have a great nuke himself. That would have easily been a start where Na'Vi gets the first map of the series, and it was obviously a very well contested one at that. But for him to still have individual pop-offs, I feel like people have used the term fragging in-game leader for a lot of different people lately. But for my money, Apex, he does put himself in some active positions where like maybe he doesn't put up the star roll numbers, but he still has it in him to do it. And I think that's probably, for me, of any in-game leader in the top 10, I have a pretty hard time saying that somebody per role is better in terms of being a fragging in-game leader, unless you really want to say like Twist right now or Device, but they're not really reaching nearly the same level of success of like these kind of, I'd say, like S tier in-game leaders that are actually fighting for trophies day in and day out. Like Shuhei's not as good of a fragger. Alexi B is obviously not as good of a fragger. Chopper is even kind of baity, and he still isn't as good of a fragger. Kerrigan has gotten to the point where it's like, oh my god, like some people like, I mean, Austin said on the last one that Kerrigan should retire. so like his fragging's not too good either. And when I really look down, I think that Apex is the only guy where I'm like, yeah, he can actually just go 23 kills, 20 deaths in a grand final, on a map. And it's not, it wouldn't surprise me is the main thing. Like when Kerrigan or Alexi do that, I'm like, holy crap, they're rolling it back. But when Apex does, I'm like, that's just another Tuesday.
I think like what's even more impressive is when he's doing this is he's just hard entering. It's not, you mentioned like Chopper and baiting, but like, that's where a lot of these IGLs fall is you're either one, you're doing the Hooksy impression where you're a human flashbang, or two, Kerrigan basically looks like he's been watching Hooksy demos lately with what he's been doing, where it feels that way, where he's just literally throwing himself in there, where Apex does, take some resources, but like not a lot. But it sets himself up so much better, and I feel like they have so much more success because of it. And I don't think there's really any other IGL right now that's doing it. And yeah, I think the word fragging IGL gets thrown around a lot, but when you actually look at the top 5 IGLs, Apex, I think, clears all of them just purely based off of impact alone. Not to mention, I think there's something to be said about a guy that I feel like, given opportunity, I feel like ZywOo will never leave Apex. That's also, and I feel like there's a quality there that constantly gets overlooked, as if Apex, yes, did ZywOo kind of just land in his team? Yeah, but I don't think anybody has ever also watched Vitality from a team perspective and felt like he's not a great leader for them. Some people, you get the Reddit clowns who are like, oh my God, he yelled, or he's emotional and I would never be able to play with it. No, like those guys would literally run through mountains for Apex. And that, I think also then with the article and like maybe some of the inner team turmoil and seeing what they were able to accomplish, like where you got maybe an unhappy Sphinx, like players felt like they weren't performing to their top level, and you're still able to just push through this to the finals as the leader and put on that performance. I don't know. He really just impressed me that entire Cologne event.
No, I'm with you. I actually think that I can praise Apex on like all 3 categories. Like one, I agree. As an actual just pure IGL, I actually think he's mad underrated at this point in time. The sad thing is, I think the problem is, if you remember Maui on the shores, when Vitality started winning towards the end of CSGO, like they won Rio and then they won the fucking Blast Major and they could have won the Blast after that as well. At that point, people did the convo there like, is Apex a top 3 IGL? Because he's just won the Major, right? And the problem is because at the time, a lot of us were like, nah, probably not. Like, he's not really like a tactical genius, is he? Blah, blah, blah. I feel like people did that thing where like the narrative just gets stuck forever of like, all right, he's like one of those ones that we don't give credit to. Like, he's just like Hooksy, like people fragged and he didn't. It's like, no, I actually think, especially this year, by the way, when actually the team didn't win as much, I actually feel like he looks really good on the T side. Like, he calls like a fabulous style, by the way. In fact, he's one of the people where after seeing how he calls in Vitality, bro, it isn't just a ZywOo thing. I think he could have any of the stacked rosters that like to play up-tempo CS. He could be the FaZe Clan IGL potentially. He could probably himself have G2's roster. Like, bro, he's just, if he's got skilled players on T-side that are willing to go in, because obviously he will go in himself, he's just actually a good T-side caller at this point in time. Then you've got the whole thing where, as an actual fragger while doing it, he is able to do the occasional, like, roll back the years as an entry. I agree. And also, on the whole, like, on the third thing, basically what you're saying there is, like, he also, like, does actually manage the morale of the team. Maybe he's not the guy people think of when they think of man management, because normally we think of, like, managing egos. Bro, he actually sometimes has to be the ego in their team. Fucking ZywOo won't do it. Spinks is quiet. Flames is like a jokester, and Mezzy's like a mixture of like a bit of a jokester and a bit of a quiet guy. Like, they don't really actually have. I always keep pointing this out to people. People talk like their team's insanely experienced and they're all like FaZe class. I'm like, bro, most of their players only got to the top like in the last 2 years. Like, they aren't the guys that look like, quite frankly, they don't look like they're depressed if they lose the final always. You know what I mean? Like, some of them are still in the phase where it's like, oh, cool, we did well at this tournament. tournament. So I think actually he needs to be the fire. I mean, ever since they had the lineup way back in 2021, when he that famous story where you remember there was 0-2 in the Swiss system at the Rio Major, and then he literally, Stockholm Major, and he famously had to actually say to Ziwu, like, we're going home soon, mate, if you don't do something now, basically. And no joke, that game onwards, Ziwu just carried the rest of the tournament. Like, absolutely smurfed all the games. And, like, I think that is actually an essential part he's doing. Because I know what you mean. To the idiot fan, they do that thing where, I don't know, either every team's supposed to be laughing and smiling and clapping like a fucking shit American TV ad from the 90s for Polaroid or something, or they're all supposed to just be like, you know, locked in, professional, like, well done, yes. So when they see him react, they actually think, for real, like, he's wilding, look, he's out of control, like, oh, he must be putting everyone off. And it's like, bro, if anything, I actually think that team lacks a little bit of that spark. I think he probably brings that to them. He is the fire, the fuel in their team. And by the way, I definitely agree on the first point. Not only is he actually, as an IGL, probably a top 5, top 3 IGL, but actually his ability, and I've always said this is mega underrated, abilities of IGLs to both be sacrificial but find real frags is actually a mad underrated quality. And obviously he's gotten really good at it. I'd say he improved every year. He was IGL 2021 onwards. He's gotten better and better, 2020 I guess, but he's gotten better and better and better at that role. So yeah, I think he kills it. I agree with you in general. I also do think as well that on the whole fragging IGL thing, the real problem with that term is this. It's that it was just abused by the people where the emphasis was the word fragging and not the IGL part. So obviously people like fucking Blame F's probably the worst one ever because it's like, was he ever really an IGL? You know what? He was fragging. Don't worry about that. Then you have like, I'd say more in the middle is the Cadian and James because some of that's like, look, you're certainly fragging. You're also IGLing, but sometimes it looks like, you know, you get caught in trying to do both and it's a bit limited style. I think people have seen those players can't just be IGL of any team. They couldn't do what I just said with Apex. I think when we say fragging IGL, I normally mean a real IGL who does like the tactics and the calls, and can they basically just not be a bot? You don't have to be good. When I say fragging, like I don't really mean like Glaive didn't have that many tournaments where he had crazy numbers, but he'd have games where he just broke it up and had like 5 entries himself just purely out the gate. That's what I mean when you mean fragging IGL. So I think in that category, if we take out the weird outlier cases, Apex is absolutely one of the best, mate. It clearly fits into the squad as well. So no, I think he's actually underrated, if anything, now. So I think players like that could probably only be underrated or overrated in it. It's the nature of being such a big personality. Right.
Well,
go on.
Yeah,
you can do more.
I mean, the thing about the calling, too, is just that this team, like, when we were talking about the flaws of Vitality in the previous season, generally speaking, it was on their CT side. And I cited the argument before that was, I think Ziwu needed to opt more, and he actually is this season. But another thing is that it felt like the communication between people on certain bomb sites, it could be really anybody. It could be Ziwu, Spinks, Flames, Mezzi was never really up to snuff, and they didn't always play off of each other, and that's why their CT sides would actually suffer compared to their T sides, which were, by the way, still, if you do top 20 for 2024 filter, it's the best.
Must be one of the best.
It's the best T side in terms of round win percentage, but then their CT side's kind of in the middle of the pack, and the thing is that that's because Apex is calling more on T side if he's relying on other people to say stuff. And that almost makes me think, because if anybody's like, you know, played with other people and they like, you're supposed to be the in-game leader, but you have this lurker on the other side of the map that's not saying anything. I almost feel like Apex is probably working with that a little bit. If they can't call for their own CT side setups on their other side of the map, then he's probably not even getting the most information out of some of those lurkers sometimes. So I even find what he's doing more respectful, or respectable, just because he's probably, if they're not giving feedback on CT side, are they really giving a lot on T side also? He's probably having to come up with so much stuff all the time, and yet still, he's got the best T side by a decent margin, actually.
Also, by the way, I do love that all those Ziwu stats were like, no, he doesn't need to opt more. He's really good with the rifle. In fact, he might be better than Donk. Then, like, as they were, like, about to, like, potentially lose the final clone, Ziwu was just like, I bet just buy the AWP every round CT side of Mirage. And they were like, hey, we're winning the game now. Like, yeah, no shit, that's what we were telling you the whole time, you moron. It's actually a compliment how good he is as an AWP, you idiots. Like, I always say this, like, with the Ziwu one, it's just the reverse of the NiKo one. By the way, NiKo's totally fine as an AWP. He's really good. He's just so good with the rifle. Why would you not? You know what I mean? It's like, why would you go to your secondary skill set if your number one skill set is like the best? So come on then, Maui, what is your good point?
My good point is that the RMRs I think you could give it to a couple different things. One is the teams are playing well, and the other is actually the fact that the Valve seeding sort of worked. We actually got all of the top 33 teams
All
ranked
right.
on HLTV in all the RMRs. So sometimes you would, we would get like Astralis wouldn't make it through the closed qualifier, or I don't even. There was definitely some teams that had some difficulty making it to the RMRs, and now as it stands, the highest team. Oh, I'm sorry. There was one team missing. It's ENCE. And
All
ENCE
right,
is the one
okay.
team missing that I wrote down where they didn't actually make it. And
I mean, I will
in the
just
top
say on that
30.
one, people are already looking at that through rose. Stop right now, everyone watching this video. Don't Google it. Can you even write all 5 ENCE players? Write it down right now and publish it as a comment. You're a liar if you even published a comment that had all 5 there. You literal liar. You're still all thinking of that lineup from kind of 8 here. By the way, there are some of the players from that lineup eliminated this ENCE. So I know what you mean, Maui. The name ENCE matters, but like no one even knows the team anymore, bro. Like that team isn't be dead at this point.
Yeah, I don't even
forgot who's on that.
No one
team.
does. No
Oh
one
my
remembers. Like I said,
Exactly.
bro, Hades and Diha were on the team that beat these guys. So it's like no one remembers
I
that squad.
know.
No one
As
does.
soon as he said
I
it,
don't.
I was like,
I
they're
don't.
not there
No.
anymore, but I can't remember.
No, I could maybe get 4. I don't think I could get the 5th though. I think the 5th would evade
Yeah.
me. You know.
Yeah. I still haven't seen them play enough that I don't know how their opera's name is pronounced, and I just in my head I'm
Okay.
reading it potty. So I don't.
Okay.
I hope that's not too offensive for that person. But yeah, no, I just don't see them play enough. But no, I actually wrote it down. There's actually only 2 top 40 teams missing of all of the RMRs, and that is ENCE and that's OG right now. And they just made some roster moves themselves. So I feel like the RMRs more or less accomplish what we want them to at least. Sure, the major can be a different story, and we can get all these teams that are out of the top 15 making or top 20 or whatever making it. But I mean, the thing is that at the end of the day, the Valve system worked with the invites, and also the teams. I don't know if that's really I don't know if I want to grade the closed qualifiers like they did a good job, but it's just that the teams that were supposed to do well did well, and I just feel like that's overall a good thing because every now and then you just get a team that's a little too high ranked that doesn't even make it to the RMR, and you're like, what's going on here? Are these online qualifiers this brutal? And at this point, like any team that didn't make it, they probably messed something up themselves, or they just made a recent roster move just like ENCE, just like OG.
Okay. What do you think, Flom? You care?
Well, I mean, oh man, it's kind of, okay. So it's kind of tough because I'm trying to separate what he's saying from also what just happened in the North American part of the qualifier. But I think your point is true. I think from the seeding, like getting the top teams from the European standpoint is good. But I don't want to jump the gun a little bit on what I was going to mention later. Yeah. Okay. So, well, can I go straight to my thing?
No. Yours is one of the bad points and like a not positive
yeah.
one. So we can
Okay,
do that
I'm
one
curious.
later. That's all good. Yeah, we'll just come back to that later.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Is there anything more you care about with it? Like, put it this way: when you watch the events, are you one of those people who gets triggered if the top teams don't make the major or someone drops out? Do you mind?
No, I think whoever kind of like, I do think that if the format's flawed, you critique the format, but also at the same time, you have to respect the results. Otherwise, you're just doing a disservice to the teams that are there. Right. When Saw makes a run, you respect the run. Do I recognize that they'll probably lose at some point and that it is, I'm not using the word fluke, but was it an overperformance, right? Yeah. Same thing. When it comes to the RMRs, close qualifiers, wherever it is, if the format is crap, that's the format's fault. If the teams make the most of it, I don't mind seeing upsets. Does it suck sometimes? Like when you're just like, I wish, put big name here in was there and they were drawing in a little bit more hype and I knew the teams a little bit better and I've seen them play a bit more. Yeah, absolutely. But I think at the end of the day, getting the top teams there for the most part is usually a good thing, but we're still also like weaning off of partnerships. So really the top teams to me is still a bit of a facade because of who gets direct invites still remaining from the past tournaments. And I don't think it directly reflects who the best teams are at the moment. We're in a really weird, we're like in that awkward teenage phase where like we're just starting to like leave the partner system and we're going to start seeing like what that evolves into, but we haven't left it yet. So I think some of these teams are really going to have like a harsh reality check as soon as NIP would be the first one that I could think of. You throw OG made good changes. Absolutely. And I think they're trending in a good way, but you can't sit there and tell me like that you wouldn't be incredibly worried about them going into a non-partnership situation. That's kind of what I mean is like there's teams like that where I don't really know how relevant after you get past the top 15 teams. I don't know how relevant the rankings really are. So after those teams, I don't really care as much.
Yeah, the other thing is, I have to say, selfishly, I don't really care, Maui. Like he says, anything beyond about 20, I mean, that's even being kind. I'm probably only saying 20 if a team I like dropped to 17. It's probably 15's the cut-off. After about 15, you may as well not actually exist. Like, I am one of those people like MonteCristo, where I would absolutely just say bye to most of the people in the scene, including Flom, and they could all fuck off, floating away in a door, and the lifeboat would be my Super League, where it's just the top 10, 15 teams in the world, and we just play each other 4 times a year in a I'd be a total elitist. But with that said, for the major, I do think because Valve's never going to actually just let it be invites, they're always going to require some form of qualification. And the problem with the major obviously is it's tricky when you have people in different parts of the world who don't always play all the events. So it's going to be hard to actually be fair to people in regional scenes, etc. I actually think the proposed frameworks I've heard of, and this isn't it, obviously, guys, next year it changes. And like he says, we're transitioning what we have now sort of to what it's going to be next year. It seems like in general it goes in the right direction. Like from what I've seen, I would say this. Bear in mind, I haven't run some exhaustive dry run with every possible situation, and sadly, it seems like Valve and the TOs never do. Unfortunately, like a lot of things in CS, you'll probably have to wait until the first travesty happens, and then you'll figure out what's wrong with the system. Like there'll be some team where we'll have all seen them at 2 big lands have a really big result, but then something will happen, like they didn't attend enough other events, or their elo was too low, whatever it is with that system next year, and they'll just miss the qualifier by 1 spot, and then we'll know there's a flaw potentially in the system. But that's one of those ones you probably have to work the kink out. I do think this system that they're moving to is way better than what we used to have, though. Like, I think people don't realise how lucky we are. You don't know how lucky we are that the major winner didn't just used to lose at the RMR. That's actually just luck. Literally, I'm not even joking. Like, all it would have taken. Remember, you can even put in mad situations like someone for real just gets food poisoning the day of the match. That's the 2-2 game. Like, it just somehow never happened. We never had FaZe Clan, someone just bombed straight out, or whoever just won the last one. Even fucking the VPs of the world, they all just made it. So it meant at the top end, we never had that much to complain about. Nearly all the elite teams always did. But it could have happened. I don't think people realise that. Absolutely was possible. Ever since they got rid of the legend spots, it was absolutely possible that they just don't qualify. They just inexplicably have the worst day ever. Like the Australia super team have. No, by the way, we never even actually saw that fucking team play. Played 2 lands or something. And then we just abandoned it. And by the way, I'm not going to make a whole tangent, but with how that team's sort of regressing back to the mean now, bro, I don't even know if that was better than the potential of that super team. We never really got to explore it. If anything, we run the course on the current lineup. So, yeah, in general, I think it's good. Right, I would say, go on, do you have something else?
I think one other little good thing is also just the time between the RMR and the Major too. I guess that's kind of it is a little bit of a tangent too, but it's just, before it was over a month or something between the RMR and this, and now it's just, I think it's a week and a half. I think it's 10 days now. Okay. So it's not like we're getting before it felt a little disconnected. It was like the ranking of the teams was kind of not always perfect for the RMR, but then also the team's form would change because there's a whole month between the actual major itself and the RMR. And I think now the fact that we're just getting you're playing the RMR, which is essentially I guess it's not the major closed qualifier anymore, but it almost kind of takes the place of it in terms of the in spirit what it's supposed to do. And then you're just jumping into the major and not this long breath of time that's just kind of felt sort of just disconnecting and made it feel kind of stringy, as opposed to you wanting to actually just see, okay, cool, these teams that have got through the RMR that were sort of surprises are now just jumping into the major with hopefully that same form, so you can continue the narrative, because so many people just watch the RMR at this point and almost in some ways care more about the results. I've even made that claim before. They care more about the RMR results than really everything but the major winner results.
Okay. Right, for my good point, I'm going to take an interesting angle on this, because you're going to think, doesn't even make sense I'd say this is good, because it sounds like I'm actually going to talk about some recent drama from that X-Stars interview where he came out and he said, the thing about Messi doesn't get enough credit basically, and people were scapegoating him like he was Kyojin, who, by the way, I don't care where X-Stars now walked back, obviously is an excellent example of a shit player at tier 1. That was a totally on-point example. There's nothing bad. So my good point actually is the bigger picture about Vitality, which is, this is where that Reddit thread, by the way, will actually drive you mentally ill. If you read it, Maui, there are comments with hundreds of points saying stuff like, I can't believe the team's already dead. It's in the article on the first sentence, it says that this was months ago. They got past it, that they're not going to change any players. And in the meantime, they won IEM Cologne Pro. People for real. Reddit now, Maui, literally, is analysis of the headline. Literally, that's it.
Yeah.
So because they didn't even read sentence 1, they don't even know, which is my good point, which is, bro, I actually love that in Pro CS, nonetheless, we actually do have professional players. As in, maybe all this is true based on that interview. Maybe Spinks did want to leave 2 months ago. Maybe he had, and we won't say who, we don't know on this one. Maybe he didn't like certain way things were running. Maybe he didn't like Apex. Who the fuck knows? Could be any reason. Maybe he had a team he wanted to join that he would have had a better role in or something. Whatever the reason would be, it didn't happen. They didn't go through the move. Any issues they had, by the way, clearly are resolved because they just won the biggest tournament of the last fucking 4 months. And they're just going to keep the lineup. And by the way, as of right this moment, personally, they would be my favourite to win the next major. I wouldn't even take Na'Vi on that one. I can't be as sure. Vitality is so loaded as a team. They could win everything from here to the major and out. They could have the next era. They're the most obvious team you'd pick to do it. So the reason why I picked this as a good point is, bro, the amount of times behind the scenes you hear those stories of like, they know someone's leaving. And either it can go 2 ways. It can either go like this and you do the pop off like a G2 mate and win with the bad lineup that you know you're going to leave anyway. Sometimes it goes like Spirit. That's why people were worried if Spirit was making a change. You do really badly because you know the team's dead and no one gives a fuck. And you start the game badly and you phone it in. But what I actually like is the idea that like it doesn't have to be either of those. Some people are actually professional enough that even if like, because what I want to make clear to people is this is going on in most of the top 10 teams, literally all the time. Like if you guys only knew the people who could have been in like some of the greatest teams of all time and who would have been kicked from some of the greatest teams of all time, by the way. And sometimes that's while they're winning. Like there's some mad ones back in the day. JW tried to leave Fnatic before they won those extra majors. And he tried to leave and go to fucking Nip, who was worse. There's an example of like, you actually dodged a bullet there, mate. You actually tried like some fucked up idiot Kyle Reese to come back in time and ruin your own career instead of stopping Terminators killing everyone. Like, what even is that, bro? Like, your alternate, like, most people are like, but what if I'd done this? Your what ifs are worse. Yours like some shit butterfly effect. So I'm actually glad that there are pros, because by the way, you would have thought Vitality should actually be the sort of bellwether for if this exists in the pro scene. Again, they don't have a core that played many, many years together. It's basically just Apex, Ziwu, and fucking Spinks at this point in time, remember? Like, and Spinks only joined at the end of 2022, guys. So they don't have some crazy history. They're not all French, so there's no reason you have to stay for that reason. And people like Spinks, fl0m, and Ziwu could all go and be in most of the top 5 teams. So if there really was the case that like everything's about ego or drama, you have to be best friends, then this team should have broken up ages ago and would have probably. But whatever reasons, by the way it was actually described by Extaz makes Spinks sound like a model professional. Okay, he wanted out potentially. He made the request. They went and asked for other players, just not apparently Hunter. They did say they asked for other people though. They inquired. They chose not to do the move. After the player break, they come back, they turn up, they win one of the biggest events of the year. They're just going to stick with it for the next season. By the way, everyone's doing their job as far as I can tell in this example. Extaz is doing what he's asked. He's actually seeing, is it possible? Okay, you want out, let me see if I can facilitate that. But also, obviously, I have to get someone good for my team so my team can still win. Let me see if there's someone out there we can do a deal with. When it doesn't happen, Spinks doesn't apparently just go, oh, I'm Stewie 2K, and if you don't let me leave to IPR, I'm just not going to fucking play well. Give me a massive contract so I can just be a dickhead to everyone. Oh, wait, I'll just make a note and do that in 4 years. Straight fire joke. Anyway, EG, think about 2018, 2024. You can do the jokes at home and the maths at home too. So you could do that, or you could do the other one where I've heard also, I won't say names for this one, I've heard of players where when they don't get their way like that, they don't say that they don't like it. They just sort of are a bit of an arse in the team and they make it uncomfortable for the guy they wanted out. And they make it so that eventually either something comes to a head, like he explodes, like gaslighting him, or eventually the team just goes, oh, he is actually kind of bad, maybe we should kick him in. And that's like the worst way to do it, because you're just like co-opting the job of the fucking GM and the coach at that point. So actually, despite all the drama that was spiraling this and all the memes and all the Kyojin catching strays and all that jazz, I actually think it looks like it was handled very well. And I want to actually compliment, my good point, the professionalism of top pros. Because I bag on them a lot when they make like the 30k a month and act like little kids, a la Stewie 2K. But I actually like when they act like real sports pros. Because you know what? In sports, there's a million fucking times. By the way, even people like Scottie Pippen ask for trades. Sometimes you don't get the trade, but if you're a big boy, you put your pants on and go back to work anyway and try and win with the lineup you have today. So I actually thought that scenario had like a hidden lining of actually professionalism, believe it or not.
You know, it's funny, you cited that their success is the reason that it was resolved, but in a way you kind of missed the bigger point, I feel like, which is to prove your point. What if it's not resolved fully and they still won, right? Like, I
that's
mean,
dope too.
Yeah, exactly. That's an even bigger sign of the level of professionalism, is like maybe he's still a little bit upset, but he's still showing up and doing exactly what he's
and he
supposed
played
to.
great too. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And I saw them in person, and like I'll do the Reddit armchair
Go on.
analysis, but like, they're not like, it's not like you would see them at the bar and they're like, one sitting on one end or
Right.
something. No, they're all together. They're still teammates. They're still celebrating their win as teammates. Like the other, and this is something where I think you're right. I think some players are becoming more professional. I think Vitality, that interview was a nice little like insight into how they run things. I mean, but I will say this, I think it goes further back than Vitality, and I would go further up than Xtaz. When you look at their major win and how they conducted themselves right after that, I think speaks to the level and how they run that team. And I talk about this a lot on my own personal stream, where there's very few teams right now where I feel like there's an actual manager of the roster and actual like overall vision for the team. The fact that you cut Dupree after winning the major is no other team would do that.
No, it's a true sports move. Yeah.
And that shows like where they're at mentally in terms of like the management of the roster and what they're willing to do. They didn't want to just be good still. Yeah, you just won the major, but you had a chance to make an upgrade for a younger, potentially cheaper contract than Dupree. Why wouldn't you go do that, right? Like from a business perspective, it made perfect sense. From a fan perspective, I was like a bit sad, but I also understood what they were doing. And I think that was like actually maybe one of the first moves where I really felt like somebody was just handling it like a true professional roster. And then another team that I like to cite that for this kind of stuff is Navi, right? And Navi, you've seen directly benefit from this for giving Blade essentially a general manager role along with the coach. Now it could backfire, you could end up like Bill Belichick and not be able to actually properly draft for like years on end and then slowly degrade your roster. But Blade has definitely not done that. He identified the type of players he wanted. He got the players he wanted for the system that he wanted. He got the IGL that he got exactly what he wanted and had an actual vision for the roster and a professional outlook of the team rather than, oh, I just like this guy, oh yeah, he's kind of cool, he's pretty good. No, it's, or like this guy's friends with this guy and they're both pretty good and they get along, so let's get him on the roster too. Fuck roles. No. I mean, I love thinking like of the professional aspect in the Navi roster because you and I talked about this before, Thor, and like the trajectory of this Navi roster when they first formed is actually batshit insane.
Oh, of course.
Like the international roster where you got JL and Emma and Wonderful, and you no longer have Simple, and you're an international.
By the way, dude, the one that always kills me is definitely the JL one as well, because bro, people have retconned his whole history. They've just decided that he did what Emma did at that planet. He didn't, bro. If you go look on Apex, he wasn't that guy. He's not the guy he is now. Like that is actually such insane scouting by Blade. Whatever he saw in that player wasn't there in Apex, I swear. He was an all right player on Apex, bro. Like, I agree with you. Like, the rest of the team's genius anyway, but that's probably been like the pickup of the fucking year. Look at that, right? Remember, as soon as Simple left the lineup, didn't everyone get bummed out? I did. I thought, fuck, that's it. It's over already. What?
Yeah, no, so I feel like Navi's another great example of just like that level of professionalism that we have in the CS scene. And then one more just to throw in there because you got to give Maus. Maus' scouting has been insane. The way that they run that entire system is unbelievable. The fact that basically if you don't have an academy team, you should just start signing Maus NXT players at this point. They have such a like you have such a high success rate. Like fuck it, don't even like watch the games. Just start signing them because you're gonna probably do a better job than if you actually went and scouted yourself.
By the way, that's even a real concept that actually does exist in like football, for example. What happens is there's certain teams have amazing academy systems, and if you're smart, look, you could naively go, why do I start my own? But that's going to take like 30 years to get up and running and be good. So if you're smart, what you actually do is you just start heavily scouting the players they've already got on their team, and then you sign them before they get the pro contract. Like, by the way, that's actually even the joke is he referenced Bill Belichick. That actually is Bill Belichick's fucking secret power. He's actually terrible at drafting. But I tell you what, if you draft someone and you don't use them right, he'll sign them really cheap for you and then use them in some way that like didn't make sense that does for like, but again, it's like a different skill set, isn't it? I know what you mean. But yeah, that is the maddest one because people do forget, bro. Maus NXT brought those players up one or two at a time. Everyone could have signed them in the meantime, but no one saw it until every time they came in the line, they were like, wait a minute, he's amazing. It's like, bro, you could have signed the whole time. He was in like the 32nd best team in the world or whatever. Which, by the way, that was also gangster where their like NXT team would make like top 20 or top 30 in the world. Like, that's pretty good. I can't lie. That's pretty gangster, isn't it?
Like the fact that Torji completely was shit for a second there under Dexter, and they still stuck with him because they knew what he's capable of. Like, no, hold on. Pump the brakes. We know what you're capable of. Let's just get Shuei back real quick. Let's just get him back on his contract. Oh wait, no, Torji's insane again. Never mind. Yeah, we were right. You guys were all stupid. Like the fact that they saw a dip in his performance to the level that they did and never wavered, and then also just brought in their new IGL, which I mean, obviously everybody knew what he was capable of. But I'm just saying, most teams I think would have ditched Torji in that situation, which also speaks to the credit of their scouting still, because they had that much confidence in their own ability to identify talent. So yeah, those are like, when you talk about professional Counter-Strike and how teams are run, not maybe just necessarily players, but to the management side, I think Vitality, Maus, and Navi are just spectacular like organizations to look at and how they run their teams.
Yes. By the way, I'll even, just to give people the historical context, if you think of the time period when Dexter was at the end in Maus, they could have signed any of these other players that we'd all probably say are better than Torji at the time, like Dexter, like fucking Wonderful himself. These players were like available in like not massive teams. You could probably have got them all. Like, so it's true. They did stick with them. Okay. What is are we doing the bad point now? Going to a bad point now, Flom? What is your bad point?
All right. Bad point it is. Let me double check.
I don't actually understand what you meant by this angle, so I'm interested to see how you're going to explain it. Go on.
Well, my bad point is just that, sorry, I got to make sure I understand this. So this is a bad point as in like, it's like not a good take, or it's not good what we saw?
I mean, you can frame it how you want. We mean like it's just a thing you think is bad in the scene. So maybe you think the take of people have in the scene is bad based on this.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah. So what I think is bad in the scene is that we saw like how basically Spirit is just so compromised when they don't have a donk performance. And I think that is bad for the scene, because when you have a team that is that reliant on a singular player, as we've seen in the past, that leads to like erratic results, which means we no longer have this dynamic. We're not going to be talking about Spirit if they show up at the event. We're going to be talking about donk shows up, right? It went for, like, and they have other star players. You have Shiro, right? You have a top 5 opera for most people, like sure, if they made a list of it, right? But you're not going to be talking about that because of what they just did at the last event. You're going to be talking about how one of the powerhouse teams, you're just going to be referring to, does donk show up or not? And that's what it is going to become the narrative, in my opinion. And I think that's bad for Counter-Strike, like in general, that their team is entirely reliant on one individual player's performance. Now, I also respect his ability and what he's doing. I'm not putting the blame all on him, but I'm saying they have created this entire situation where they don't have a plan B, it seems. You want to give Chopper credit for his ability to call, and I do as well. But the reality is, as soon as donk doesn't find his entries, one of the best teams in the world looks completely lost, and that is not fun Counter-Strike to watch, and that's bad for Counter-Strike.
I mean, I've shifted how I've felt a lot about Spirit with the calling and everything like that, because of actually even watching their games a little bit closer after the fact, such as what's happening at the Bet Boom event that's going on right now. If donk is just kind of smurfing on everybody at this event, and in the rounds where he just dies, they just lose. Like, they just lose so many more rounds. If he doesn't actually get a double entry, they just do lose a lot more. And it's kind of an eye-opening experience where it's like, oh, okay, they still won the game 13-4. Well, what happened on those 4 rounds they lost? Oh, donk just didn't get the opener, and then they just couldn't actually pick up the pieces beyond that. And the thing is that I rate Shiro quite highly. I rate him as a top 4 opper in the world right now, and I even would probably go as far to say he's a top 5 or 6 player. I haven't remade my top list entirely, but I think he's around there right now. But when I see if donk just doesn't do 160 damage at the beginning of the round, then Spirit's chances are just so much lower. The losses that they had to G2, or the loss they had to G2 at Cologne was just so damning that, oh, okay, you had your star player fall off. And I feel like there's this thing, I'm trying to think of like what the argument always was, but people would kind of, it's like you're trying not to put the cart before the horse kind of argument with the whole like star player and IGL, because it works as a tandem. Like, they both need to be performing to some level of success. But the thing is that no the thing that's so important is that when you have a star that's performing well, no amount of calling is going to ever undo a star player that's just putting up a 0.8 rating. And so I don't want to put all the blame on Chopper either, but I get your point entirely. And I do agree with it, that I do feel like so much of Spirit's success is predicated on Donk's own individual form. And I would even go to say the hot take right now that I have about Spirit is that I'll just say this, like, if we're looking at the upcoming major and who's likely to win it right now, I feel like Spirit's probably in the mix of the top 3, top 4. But I'm just going to say right now, my call is Chopper will never have an era. Chopper will never have an era. He's not the kind of in-game leader that actually puts together like actually sustainably good calling for long stretches of time. He has peaks as a caller. He has sometimes he'll put a couple good like games together in a row or whatever. He'll even do well enough to get deep into a tournament, sometimes even win it. But I will just say, like, tournament to tournament nowadays, when I'm watching Spirit, even with all the time that they take, by the way, they take events off and they sometimes go to another event and they still don't even look that good. It's almost just like randomly he'll pick in the calendar a couple events. And practically speaking, at this point, I just have to say it's practically the major cycle. Like, this guy just seems to care about the major cycle as an IGL for whatever reason. And I don't know if he even cares about other tournaments that much. Like, they don't play ESL Pro League. They didn't go to Chengdu. They're not going. Are they going to this ESL? They're skipping another event this season. I know that too.
They're in this Pro League. Maybe it's at Rio, maybe. Are they skipping Rio, maybe?
Okay, they're skipping Rio. That's right. They're skipping Rio. And I just feel like, for whatever reason, Chopper's just made it his life mission to do well at majors. And it's like, bro, you aren't Kerrigan. You're not Glaive. You're not Apex. Like, you need to perform at other events too, you know? And I think I rated Spirit too highly in the past because I was like, oh, they're the team to look out for because they did really well at this major. And then I would watch them, and this keeps happening. This has happened to me multiple times with Spirit where I get really sold on some big tournament performance. Katowice is the lone exception in Spirit's or Chopper's entire career where he did well at an event that wasn't a major. But think of even like Vegas Squadron days, the early Spirit days with Dexter, then Wonderful. It's like they'd always have these pop-offs at major, but they were so forgettable at every other event. And I just don't think he has it in him to be a consistently good in-game leader for 300 days a year. It's just like, it's more of like a 50 days a year. He'll try really hard, and that's it for me.
Oh, yeah, go on, Flom.
No, I was just gonna say, just a very short point. I feel like Chopper just calls really well with the lead. He just knows how to press. Like when he has, and especially with the type of player with Donk, I imagine Donk, he's feeding Donk, right? Like Donk's like, I'm feeling it. He's getting activated. He's good to go. You catch the lead, you catch the momentum. And Chopper really knows how to like make the most of those rounds, which, sounds easy when you hear about it, but it is hard to like stay ahead, especially at that level. You are kind of like predicting the next move. So he doesn't really, where he falters is what I think is bad for Spirit and just in general the scene, where as soon as Donk doesn't get those entries, it just looks so flat. And Shiro, unfortunately for them, is not the type of opera to go and pull that round back. If you had a Monacy, maybe, obviously a simple Torji will take like some risks like that. Like you need somebody that is also going to be a risk taker. Zontix is just too passive in those situations. Magis wants to be the guy to also take space for them a lot, but there's really no powerful follow-up. So it all just falls flat as soon as the games get a little tight, and that's where it gets really underwhelming for Chopper. But he does call incredibly well with a lead. And it is impressive when he stays ahead. I don't want to totally just shit on him and make him like, he is a good IGL, but he needs the right circumstances. And I also agree with you. I do think he puts an extra emphasis on majors, but he has such a talented team right now. It's genuinely a disservice not to have them just like locked in for more events and trying to play a little bit more. You want to manage expectations and not burn your players out, but let's be honest, dude. Donk does not need the break. Like, I don't want to speak for it, but like, you can't tell me Donk is like, yeah, dude, I want to stay home, right? No, that kid wants to be at every event and he wants to be running it down at everyone. So I agree with that take. Where like, it's kind of shitty that we just see Spirit kind of dodging some events a little bit right now, because one, I don't think they really need to. Maybe that's just me projecting what I want to see. But, secondly, it definitely hasn't benefited them. So even if you wanted to sit there and say, it's good for them, good for Counter-Strike that they refresh and come back with something new. No, we just wait to see what Donk's going to do again. And he's back in the server. And then that's it.
I'll start with the chopper angle, because if you notice, even when Spirit was on top, I actually was almost never mentioned Chopper's name, because I've always thought people are just doing the whole Madger Muteris thing where they go, oh, is he an IGL that's been around ages and now he's getting a little bit of success? Yeah, you deserve it. This is a fucking WB movie about a plucky gym teacher who became the fucking football squad's coach because he also wanted to help the mother of that star player who the dad's in prison. Give me a fucking break. It's fucking sports, you morons. Like, none of that's real. And then also, when everyone's going, I've always rated Chopper. The Vega Squadron guy! You do know the two most fraudulent people probably in all of CSGO were May in Vega Squadron, who just pressed W and didn't even have a brain. It could have been algae between his ears, mate. He just pressed W and shot people across there. And then Chopper, who was the one behind going, fly, my pretties, fly! And that was his entire playbook. Just rush, fly in Vs and shit with CZs.
Inferno Vega Squadron B-hit is
it was garbage.
Legendary. You respect the B-hit, damn it.
It was garbage.
He also was only the in-game leader of that Vega squadron for like a few weeks, by the way. He wasn't even always, I guess he was the secondary caller, but like Luis Mira did an interview with him where he was like, yeah, I only tried it for a few weeks. And it was, I actually forgot who the in-game leader was.
No one knows. No one can even remember. No one can even name all 5 members of said legendary. We just abused every word in the English language. Legendary Vega squadron. Fucking hell, bro.
Yeah. I love that. Oh yeah, no. I mean, God, just for Reddit petty grievances, I guess it's just when people were talking about Chopper and they're like, oh, real ones remember when Chopper was the in-game leader of Vega. It's like, but he wasn't.
Give me a break.
But he actually was only doing that for a week or a few weeks, and it wasn't actually that major that you watched either. So,
but anyway, the problem is, I sort of agree with Flom's point as well. I don't know if I'd just say it's with a lead. I would say this: if you look at their team, one of the biggest things that's emerged about Spirit to me is, even though I actually think Halley sometimes does a bad job, I think he's fucked up 2 or 3 vetoes alone this year that are inexplicable. Like, bro, if you just do like the safe veto, you probably just win this series. Like, what are we even doing playing this Vertigo against FaZe? What are we doing playing this Anubis against Monk? What are we doing here? Like, what is this? But with that said, in terms of the prep, they do seem like a team where if they're heavily prepped, they are really good. They look like the team where if the playbook works, I'd say basically my problem, Flom, is I think he's a plan A fucking IGL. When the plan A is brilliant, well, the whole point is the reason why Carrigan's my favourite IGL, he has like a plan fucking T. You know what I mean? Like, he can just make up a plan. He makes up his own. He makes up like Elon Musk makes up children's names. Yeah, exactly. He can just do what he wants. So at that point, those people are godlike. I think the ones who can sort of on the fly come up with something. That's not everyone. In fact, it's not most IGLs. You shouldn't even expect that. Here's the real problem I think you have in this team. It's a way of coming back to the original point. It's that you've got Donk. Because here's what's funny. If you think about this, think about last year when there was all that hype about Donk, right, and his rating, and he's going to be on the scene soon. Get ready. He's turning 17. He's going to be so fucking sick, right? At the time, remember what every thread was on HLTV. It's like, which team will Donk go to? Who will he leave and join? Will he join Virtus Pro? Will he join Na'Vi? No one ever thought he'll be in Spirit, right? Because the logic at the time was like, but Spirit isn't a top team. So at the time, if you remember, the 2 prospects wasn't Zontix. It was fucking Duncan. Art Frost was the AWPer, if you remember. And those 2 people, everyone said, these guys should just be in better teams, basically. But what happened was, that changed everything, was the Shiro move. Because since Shiro chose to leave Cloud9, remember, if he stays in Cloud9, Cloud9's probably still trying to cycle a 5th player to make an actual, like, best team in the world. That you had that potential. You had Axel, you had Electronic, you had Perfecto. That looked mega on paper. As soon as Shiro left, that was the actual balance of power shift. Because now, you not only had Donk, right? Imagine the world, guys, where the same team, but with Art Frost instead of Shiro players, right? We're not criticising anyone now. All we're doing now is going, holy fuck, this Donk guy's amazing. He's probably like top 5 player, but he plays for like the 11th best team in the world. Then we go, remember, there'd be no Shiro. We'd go, this Art Frost guy's an up-and-comer. Yeah, sure, he's not on a Shiro level or a Monacy or a Ziwu, but he's on the rise. You know, maybe if they do well at the next event, they can make a semi-final. Then we'd go, oh, Chopper's actually not calling a bad game. They have like 3 or 4 maps they're good on. Zontix, he's going to be one of the better rookies to come along. Who was this guy? Doesn't even have sick aim, but he wins all these clutches. Instead, because we've put Donk instantly, and he should be there at the Ziwu stairs, and you've got Shiro, which I agree with you, when they both frag is enough to look like the best team, it means the pressure on everyone is insane now. Like, essentially, what we're already doing is, 1, we're treating Donk like he is Ziwu. Every time he fails, like, he's fucking washed. And then also, every time Donk doesn't do it awesome like Ziwu, we just shit on every teammate like they're all bombs too. Because I think that one's mad. Like, I agree on the Shiro point. The real problem is this. This team in CS2, it is a lot about fragging. The game game is just a lot about AKs shooting people in heads. That's why the AWP's life got harder. So if you go and look at the teams that consistently overwhelm people, they're the teams that have mad firepower. They are fucking Vitality. They are Mouse. By the way, I think Mouse, it's the reason why Mouse has dusted this team off. Because when Mouse is rolling, they can have 3 stars. You usually have 2. And by the way, that's the dangerous thing about Zontix. His game isn't even crazy fragging. It's more like impact rounds and winning clutch. So actually, fragging-wise, they can actually sometimes suffer. But the problem is they have the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. This is also, by the way, quickly, is why I don't rate Chopper. Bro, if your whole shit is like when I prep and the coach studies and we get the map that we planned for and we do the game plan and then we set up donk and then we flash him and I rush in first and then he trades and gets it. That's not a tactic, because you could do all of that with any other rifle. You could even have Zewu, by the way, and you wouldn't get those rounds. You get those rounds because you have probably the most broken offensive play in the history of Counter-Strike, any version. Like, I don't think people even realize, bro, donk actually entries sometimes. When we used to say before, Forrest is like an entry, we meant in the entry pack. He actually plays what people now like to call the playmaker role. You just play behind the hard entry and you just clean up the site. That's why you get all the kills. It's actually the best fragging role in the game to have, basically. That's why NiKo was at his best when he does it. Shock's doing it like that when he's coming out the entry, the middle of the pack, and then you choose when to go in. Donk actually does both. He either playmakes off someone else like a chopper or someone running in, or he just brute forces, bro. The maps that you want to see is on a maps like Anubis. He just goes in on his own with like 2 CTs watching him, and the amount of times I have seen him kill the first guy clean like that, and either kill the second, which is already impossible. It's why if you go and look, the most broken thing about donk is, bro, he has like 3 or 4 lands where he averages over a kill a round as an aggressive rifle. Like, that isn't even possible. I said this on a past episode. Anyone who goes, well, now that Zewu's got the same rating, he's better. No, that means Zewu's worse, you dumb fuck. You don't understand how stats work. Like, here's the thing. Zewu couldn't do that. He couldn't. No one could do that, but I actually think no one could do what donk does. So I do think it's going to over-evaluate every aspect of the team, because it's going to look like you have tactics that aren't tactics. Like, they don't work for anyone else, or they're not as effective. So I do think that's sort of true. Now, look, the upside is you do have maybe the best player to ever play Counter-Strike. That could still win you a lot of tournaments, man. That can win you a major. I can get you out of all kinds of trouble. Just ask Huxley. So what I would just say is that I agree. The main problem is just that thing that, like, I do think for fragging, it has to be those 2. That's just a precondition, by the way. Those 2 must turn up. Zonk and Shiro must be really good. Now, they can do that, but if one part of that circuit breaks, you are going to actually just lose a lot of semi-finals. You're going to not win titles. Because if you think about it, right, dude, even the Na'Vi Glope, where suddenly they're in every final, is because they're getting Wonderful's pretty good, Bit Smurfs, and then JLS Crazy Tour. Like, they have 3 people too. Not all the time, which is why they probably won't have an era. So I agree with all the points, actually. I think it's well phrased. I think, actually, even though I still rank them as a mega team, I think essentially people like overrated them because of Katowice, and they have to get out their brain that wasn't even the upper limit, and probably no one can ever do that again. Remember, they lost 1 map barely at the whole tournament. Like, that was an outlier for even them.
Never seen anybody perform like that with the rifle, except for maybe NiKo leading into the major that nobody remembers because he missed a shot on simple top hut. I don't think we've ever seen anybody this good with the rifle. That was maybe like, that was NiKo, and that was maybe the closest I've ever seen.
He was insane
for any special, because NiKo did the same thing. He wasn't in the second roll. He was pure entry, ran outside, yard on nuke, killed 2 people, and you just won around. It didn't matter that you had fucking Almanac playing. Like, what the like, dude, you were just right, bro. You had NiKo, and the same thing with donk, right? You're absolutely right. We basically put him on a pedestal, but that's because he's so fucking good.
No, by the way, dude, think about that. That even would have gone the other way. Bear in mind, there's obviously a world where, like, again, say like Na'Vi woke up and they had a bad sleep or something and G2 won that major. Bro, NiKo would have been goated. He would have won a major with Nexa as the IGL and Amanek and Jax on his team. Like, mate, just give him the fucking GOAT title already. Maybe he is the best ever. Like, that's insane, bro. Yeah, that would have been nuts.
His rifling was disgusting. But yeah, I just wanted to give donk more credit, because people just cannot comprehend his, like, when people like, oh, you guys are just like hyping up donk too much. People just,
you can't overhype this player. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Even what you said, pretty swear. I even think a really unfair thing is he can't do actually what Zewu can do. Dude, I've seen Zewu. He did it against FaZe at this major. He did the first 2 maps of the final. He can play okay and still win. Donk has to. Here's the key difference. I'll phrase it very carefully. In every single big Spirit loss, donk didn't perform, but there's loads of times donk did perform and Spirit still lost. Do you see the distinction there? By the way, it's actually the other way around to all those dickhead Zewu fans who keep going, right, we can remove donk from the convo now Now it's just Monacy and Ziwu. You'd only see that.
God.
You'd only say that if you're a Ziwu fan, bro, because Donk has actually for real had something mental. Like I'm gonna say like 4 bad series the whole year. Like what do you want, bro? He's not actually like God. Like he has to have some bad games.
Yeah, I think what hurts Donk though is exactly what Maui referenced earlier though. Like honestly, I kind of have fallen into that trap a little bit. I'll absolutely admit, like not because I'm a ZywOo fanboy, but because we just don't see him as much.
That's
like
true.
It feels like we're it's hard not to like fall into that recency bias trap because it's not like they went to an event, you know, it's like they skipped an event, showed up and looked like absolute trash. So then you can't then you have to basically, you know, I'm not really, I personally am not following the Bet Boom tournament, so I can't really have much of a, like, but I'm waiting to see how they look in Pro League, and that's kind of where I'm going to be like, all right, let's evaluate Donk and see what he's up to. So I think to defend people a little bit, I don't think it's only ZywOo fanboys, only because myself, I have to admit, I fall into that trap. But that's because of their own choice with Spirit skipping an event. And then when they decide to show up, they look like crap. Like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, we're actually going to be ready for Cologne in the major. And then you show up to Cologne and you get absolutely just washed out of the tournament. It's hard not to like, yeah, just basically I said, I'm repeating myself, but fall into that trap of like, maybe he's not into that, you know, maybe it is just Modesty and ZywOo, but that's Spirit's choice. They kind of did that to him themselves.
The best thing that Spirit could be doing is, honestly, I hate to say this, but it's just ruining so many of the stat cells arguments. It's just that them playing these Bet Boom events, which most people don't care about, just so when people go on HLTV as they do, and they're like, who are the top players this year? And they click top players, and then you change it to top 20 or to 2024 top 20 filter, and you see now Donk is like 0.04 higher than ZywOo, whereas before Bet Boom started, he was like pretty much tied with him. But Donk is just smurfing so hard that the people that are like, well, actually, if you put up the stats, actually, it's gonna they're pretty much equal throughout the entire year. It's like, no, like the reason that Donk's lack of sample size has hurt him so much. If he got to play an ESL Pro League all the way through, I can't wait to see him just end that whole tournament with a 1.5 rating, because all of those teams in the group stage, which ZywOo got to smurf on similarly, Donk is going to get to smurf on as well. And so that's going to give him so much, like that's going to give him such a big lead, assuming he plays as well as he normally does at it. And I feel
By the way, that is the best argument. If you actually want to make an argument against Donk, you just say his sample size is smaller than, like, especially ZywOo, but Modesty as well. That the problem is they take that to mean he's just worse. It's like, I've never seen these games you're telling me are bad. Like, again, I'm not going to do like the fucking Austin CS, but if I pulled up the demo of the game you're telling me Donk sucks in, I think he might have had 2 series he was actually bad in. Other than that, the bad ones he's having as pure entry rifler are like, you know, he got +2, like... Mate, if that's the worst case scenario, he is the best player to ever play CS. You know what I mean? And also, that's also the last reason on the Donk one. I do look down on people who think that, like, they want to, in the stock market of opinions, Flom, they're going to short Donk. It's like, bro, this is why I actually got to look goated with all those comments in 2016 about Simple. Because I can't believe you guys watch with the eye test and go, nah, this guy's overrated. It's like, what are you talking about? By the way, we could have done like a 20 more minute Glaze session about him saying these T-sides are like, they're impossible. They don't even make sense. Bro, even his CT rifles don't make sense. When he uses the M4A1S, like his spray looks like there is zero fucking actual like spray pattern. Like it just goes straight all to the head instantly. Like it's why one of the craziest things about him as well is like, mate, his actual like close range spray is actually like an aimbot. It's actually insane. Like, it just goes straight to the head and it doesn't miss. Like, you can basically only kill this guy close range if you just catch him, like, off angle, basically. Like, you'll never win a duel against him. It's mental. Like, the problem is, because we've got so many really good players, like, the sad thing is, when I say Donk's up here, now it's going to sound like I don't think Exertion is good. I think if Donk didn't exist, we'd all be talking about Exertion as, like, the best fucking rifler in the world or something like that. But the point is, there's even gradations between them. And by the way, this isn't just, like, a player said this. Don't worry, I can tell you privately, even passive and exertion knows I'm not donk. You know what I mean? It's like the ROPS thing. It's like, oh no, I'm the best in most servers, but not if like donk or Zimu enter the server. Like I just know that they're better than me. Like I don't think fans realise we're not doing what they think we're doing. They think we're just picking the next hot player and we're just riding it like, oh, it's the best, like the media does in sports, right? We're actually for real telling you in 10 years, this will be the player that you'll be going, who was the greatest Counter-Strike player ever? Was it Neo, Forest, Simple, Zimu, you know, and this guy's name will be one of the ones that people will be arguing. Like, it's actually almost a lock. I know nothing is a lock, but in the same way as I get why Zimu fans think he's going to win Player of the Year for like 5 years, he has an extremely good chance. So does this guy, mate. This guy could win Player of the Year like every year out from now on. To me, that was just all about spirit, actually, but whatever. It turned into a dog. It's all good. He even carried this section. Never mind the fucking spirit themselves. Yeah. They just front ran early on. I agree. By the way, it's your point now, Maui.
Yeah. Let's get to mine. Okay, so my bad point is that, you know, I thought that this Cloud9 lineup would have entered at least the top 30 by now. I thought they'd be better by now. I'm a bit disappointed in why they're, and like I see certain pieces, I look at the structure, and there's a couple things I can riff on for why they're not performing as well as I would have thought by now. And you know, you could probably pick a little bit of Icy because, you know, he's still getting experience with the op. He's not really, despite the fact that there's such a wealth of talent of Eastern European operators, he's one that just kind of more a little bit above average as opposed to being a superstar player. But I actually think that my bad is, and it sucks to say it because I was defending him before, is interz might actually be the problem. I didn't think that he was the problem on the last Cloud9 when they swapped him out for Buster. I thought he was doing a fine job. But now when I watch him play, I don't think this guy has adapted to CS2 in the right way. He's way too static. He tries to play that 2016 LG taco style of stay alive, instead of ever actually picking the duel where he's going to win it eventually. Like, eventually, as an anchor on a bomb site, you need to swing. And I've seen this guy crouch behind bench on Mirage, not peek for the entire round. The player that actually goes out of apps, who makes noise, by the way. There'll be an entry player on B, makes noise, goes all the way across to all the way to market window, and then sees interz' ass. Sees his ass just sticking out of bench because interz was playing to survive so long that he gets wall banged, dead, and he never even shot a bullet when he's on a bomb site defense. And I just don't think there's any place for that anymore when you need to have players of all positions who can frag now. Like, I don't think we're in the same era that we were where you just play to live, help buy time. You know, like the right macro play, which kind of was what Hooksy was doing, by the way, for G2. He was doing a lot of proper macro plays for the team, but he just didn't always shoot them, didn't know when he needed to take the fight, and that was where it got a little bit frustrating watching him. interz is that even to a higher degree, and I don't even necessarily think it plays to the strengths of Cloud9 because this team is unfortunately a little slow to rotate right now. Like, if we want to get into team structure stuff, I'll get into that too, but I want to hear what you guys have to say first about interz and his fit on the C9 roster.
I think you nailed it, to be honest. I was a huge interz defender for a long period of time. I think he got basically the shit out of the stick on most of the teams he was playing on and made the most of it. And he found a way to get value before. But I also think you crushed it. Like the CT side in CS2 is far more dynamic. It has to be because the T sides are so oppressive right now. If you're not, essentially your logic that you take to defending a bomb site that you're using to criticize interz is how you need to apply to the entire CT side. The idea that you're going to sit and play a default round on CT side is almost non-existent now in the current meta. You always have to be taking some sort of risk. It's calculated. It's why we see sometimes CT sides even like get blown out of the waters at the moment, because you have to take risks, and if you take the wrong ones at the wrong time, it can get completely just shot on. And I think interz is a prime example as individually a player where, yeah, he's just basically playing to live. He's sitting in bomb sites. You know, I've seen it be on Dust 2. He's had so many opportunities to like take a fight, even out the situation, maybe get an entry, and he doesn't go for it at all. And then on top of that, because CT sides have to be more like dynamic, you have to invest more in a lot of rounds, which puts these anchor roles in situations where they have very little resources, which you would think interz would excel at. The problem is you don't have these resources, but you still do have to like take a fight. You still have to look for your value. The value, you can't just rely on retakes. And then when you think about the map pool that we currently have, it really makes it hard, because now that Dust 2's back in, if you lose the B bomb site, it's why mid Bs are stopped being called. I noticed this when watching all the North American qualifiers, but it's happening in tier 1 too. Teams don't like to mid B as hard. They like to pressure this mid B aspect and like fake it, feign it, create pressure there. But then they just B pop, because they know if they get a 4v4 and they're in the B bomb site, the round's over. And if you're interz and you didn't get value out of your situation, you lost your team the round. And is it really tough right now to be an anchor in that situation? Absolutely. But that's the meta. Like, other people are able to do it. You have to find value in these situations. You have to make impact. You can't just be the guy that's making the most with a little and staying alive. You have to be the guy making the most with a little, but also, similar to the IGL conversation, know when to ask for a little bit of resources and also simultaneously get yours. You have to, as dumb as it sounds, you have to get yours in some of these situations, because the retake is just not possible, and it just forces a save in MR12.
By the way, I agree on the interz angle. It hasn't looked good in Cloud9. I mean, they have other problems, but that is one of the most glaring ones, because actually the rest of the team is almost good enough most of the time. Like, they look like they're about to get results, they'll win a map, or it'll be close, but then there is something that drops off. And one of the problems is, it's actually why it's not unfair to highlight the Icy thing. Icy actually does totally fine, especially if you consider like the sort of talent he's with now. He's not in some superstar line. He's not in fucking Spirit. But the problem is, he's not like a star AWP who's going to do like a 1.2 rating all the time. And so as a result, you end up with a little bit too little firepower if interz just feeds like a motherfucker. Because Boomich is never going to be a big fragger, guys. He's obviously just a guy who does his fucking shit. He has that weird style where he's still the fucking entry guy a billion times over. But even he knows, you can tell from his game, like Magic's, he knows he's not there to shoot people in the head with AKs. That's why they don't even play on the rifle some of the time. They just play on like stupid SMGs and use like movement and closing the distance to get a kill, etc. So in their team, the problem is they do lack a little bit of firepower, which I actually think you're making about the role, and I'll make like a larger point actually about CS2, which is, I think, one of the things we're finding in CS2 is, through no fault of anyone's, it's not CSGO, but in terms of how you build rosters. Like, so many rosters that on paper look like, bro, that's actually a fire roster. Oh shit, this isn't CSGO. And then you realize in CS2, no, they're not going to have enough firepower. Fuck. Oh, you're doing right in CSGO. Like, I always give the examples of, like, I always thought at the end of CSGO, that Heroic and that Ents lineup, neither of them actually really had the true firepower you probably should have to ever be number one or win a tournament. But they were always right there, and they made it entertaining, didn't they? Because in CSGO, you could play a little bit more off like team play, and you sort of didn't need as many frags if you could get the right frags as a team and working together and using utility and delaying and using numbers advantage. CS2 feels way more, especially from the AC side, about just shooting people, just having people who are really skilled. It's why the joke the other way around is, didn't everyone in the scene sort of whiff on the G2 lineup and think that would be total shit? And then you watch and you're like, oh no, wait, it's CS2. Just having that many AKs that shoot you in the head literally just win you the round. It turns out, and this would be essentially, Flom, like if in the NFL, I mean, this could even be true, I guess, actually. If in the NFL, you didn't really need like an insane playbook and to call the right route and set up fair. What you just needed was actually just draft like the 4 fastest wide receivers you can get, and then just tell them all just run like a go route, basically. And whichever one's open, we'll throw to you. And then that quarterback gets like 50 touchdowns. Like, that wouldn't be that the quarterback was a god. It'd be like, oh, the whole game's changed. Yeah. What we actually thought about how the fucking sport worked is wrong. So the point I'll make very briefly, because anyone who played 1.6 will know what I mean by this. One of the saddest transitions from CS 1.6 to CSGO was not the star players that didn't make it. It's the role players that had no place in CS anymore. So 2 of the most famous role players ever for the interz role were Senya, the guy who's still around now from Na'Vi, the Ukrainian player, and then Lord, the guy who was obviously the coach in CSGO, who was the Polish one with Neo and Taz. In 1.6, these 2 guys' job was to be interz, but they were mega at it. They would play all the shit roles, all the roles where you just play for time, and you just play off people, and you have no fucking gun, you give the gun to the better player, you have all the dog shit like the bad utility to throw, you don't get any utility thrown for you, and their job basically was either A, outperform the other guy doing that role, or B, add enough that isn't fragging, that when your superstars win you the game, you win everything at that point. Those 2 players, no joke, didn't even survive like a year of CSGO. They were done completely, because basically the message of the games, if you look at like an abstract perspective, was in 1.6, there wasn't the kind of peakers advantage that we had in CSGO, and definitely not the CS2 one. So back in 1.6, if you essentially had the equivalent of an off angle, you would win that fight. Like the guy wouldn't just insta-snap because he wasn't seeing you slightly faster. So what would happen is you didn't have to be as skilled on certain CT positions like anchor on a site. You just had to play off it well, call for the anti-flash well, like waste time, hide behind the box, draw them out. You could do things that weren't shoot them in the head. When CSGO came along, people tried that, and you couldn't do it. Like, you couldn't do the spray down. There's no such thing. Everyone remembers 1.6 frag movies. Think how many times, Flom, there's a clip where a guy on the arch at CTB Inferno just sprays the whole clip. Like, that's never happened in CSGO, bro. You know what I mean? Like, that might have happened once ever if they weren't even looking and they all had Glocks. You know what I mean? Like, that used to be routine. We even used to make fun of people who made that frag movie because every fucker could get that spray down. So those players already were sort of like surplus to requirements. And then I'll make this point very briefly. People will think, but Thorin, we did have those players in CSGO. Bro, they were all former star players that transitioned over because the role needed more skill. So who's the best support ever? Zipnix, right? Zipnix at the end of 1.6 was like an up-and-coming aggressive AK rifler. What he did was he swapped and became like the mega overqualified, way more skilled than you should be, shit support player who takes all the bad roles. Then you had, like, if you remember, NBK did the same thing. He used to be a star, he used to win MVPs of events. Then he just transitioned, played all the dirt roles. Then you even think of some of the other people that you had in the scene. You had Edward, he used to be like the best, right? He used to be donk in fucking CS 1.6, guys. He was just a good support player. You had Seized, he came along as an aggressive star rifler. He transitioned and became like the support rifler in fucking Na'Vi eventually. Loads of these players. You actually, essentially in CSGO, certain roles actually needed more skill than you need in 1.6. I think it's the same in CS2. Because like I said about the Spirit one, bro, you can't make these like cool teams. Like my best example actually would probably be 2019 Ents. You remember the one with Alu and Alexi B and Ariel and X7 and Sergey? Bro, that team, we're probably even being generous saying Sergey's a top 10 player. Like, that team had no top 10 players. I don't even know if we're actually ranking, forget sample size, just eye test, who was actually the best. I don't even know if that team had one top 20 player. I don't even know if Alu was actually a top 20 player at the time. But that team would fucking work together awesome. They had all the setups on CT side, all the crossfires. Yes, they abused the AUG, but that's because the AUG made the skill gap less, so it allowed everyone to frag at a higher level and get kills that were easier, like a 1.6 off-angle type, or spray someone down with an AUG. So I actually think a problem that we're going to run into a lot now in CS2 is you can't do the kind of rosters that actually we would used to praise. Like, this is a great example of one, this Cloud9 one. On paper, this would actually be like a good GM job in CSGO. I promise you, it would be like up-and-coming AWPer, like solid rifler who's proven his skills. You've got Axar still. We're going to recoup him by giving him his spots back. Interz, your job is just play all the shit support roles. Boomich, you're just the space creator in IGL. That team would actually be good, by the way. That would be like the 10th best team in CSGO. The problem in CS2 is that's probably the 18th best team. So I do think there's actually a bigger discussion. You want to dive back in, Maui? I made it a bit abstract there.
I feel like, I think that, it almost feels like we're starting to see that the mold is breaking for roles, essentially. Like, the fact that G2 are looking as good as they are, sure, they haven't won a tournament,
sure,
but man, like,
they
feel
could
like
have, though.
They just load up. I still think they can win a tournament with this lineup, even with me hating how they call. Like that's how good they shoot right now. So that's where it feels like it's this game. I get what you mean with the angle of firepower is more important than ever in CS2. I feel like Navi's kind of lifted themselves above that because they actually use great tactics and have some good firepower too. But then you do have the G2s where it's like, anybody could call this. Like, anybody could call this on any given moment, and then you just have guys that are just running out mid on Mirage and they're getting 4 kills. It's just like, these are the same nade set. This is the same nade set everybody's throwing, by the way. It's just they're getting way more out of it because they have better players. So I don't think, for whatever reason, it just seems like the best way teams should just go into the breach route and just sign 5 FPL stars at this point and just see what happens, as long as you have some semblance of structure at all. So I don't think that team's going to...
By the way, the point you made as well about CT side is also true. It's not just on the T side, Flom. Like, one thing that doesn't exist now on CT side, actually, if you want an old school CSGO example, before they were Astralis, when Carrigan's team with Device was called TSM, bro, that might be one of the best CT teams you'll ever see in Counter-Strike. They could literally just sit in the bomb site with the normal 2 on the small site, 3 on the big site, and because every player, except Carrigan, was some semblance of star talent, they literally could just... there was no way in. Like, remember, remember, util wasn't as developed back then. A lot of it was like an AK peeking onto the spot where you're right. They could just win by out shooting you. They could just sit on their spots and not do anything crazy. That doesn't exist in CS2. Even if you think of the really skilled teams, like I'd say Maus is a great example. Bro, if Maus does like 8 CT rounds in a row, they probably made like 4 or 5 rounds worth of plays though. Like on CT, 2 people at this site did like a flash set play out here, or as this person's like sneaking up the fucking balcony on Inferno, that's when they decided to peek mid really quickly so they could see if anyone was second mid. Like they're not just sitting back like a brick wall in that sense. They actually you have to be proactive to even have a sick defense, which I think also implies you can't just sit on an off angle anymore.
Yeah, to take your point to the ultimate degree that you did, I don't know if I fully subscribe to it, where you went with like the G2 take and the firepower. Also, then you talked about the NFL. The problem is you described the 4 fast wide receivers. They did that with the Dolphins. They lost in the first round of the playoffs. And then G2 also lost to this team called SAW in the first round of the playoffs. The problem is that I subscribe that they can absolutely win tournaments purely off firepower and that teams need more, but also just like Maui also just said, with like Navi and Maus kind of like show you that you need a little bit of both. You can't just you can't shoot everyone out of the server in G2, because eventually you end up like G2 where you end up with a 5v4 80% of the time and you end up losing 13-9, 13 whatever.
Here's how I would resolve it this way, Flom. It's not that it's one extreme or the other. Like you don't need firepower, you need only firepower. The problem is though, I would say the conclusion you can agree upon is this: you can't have like the sub firepower teams that existed before though. Before you could sort of just say like with hard work, a bit of elbow grease and believing in the dream or whatever, we can get it done. Like you can't. You actually have to shoot them in the head at this point. You know what I mean?
The optimist of me though wonders if just these players need what sometimes is maybe I'm not saying it isn't mechanical, but I do like to think about maybe is it the fact that these star players are more willing to basically demand more in their situations, where when they move into those like supportive roles, they basically aren't afraid to like take some of the resources.
Could be.
I feel like interz literally is bad at taking resources. That is a skill in itself. And I think that's almost like that. I always wonder like which one it is. Is it that you just can't shoot people and you don't have the confidence, or do you just not know how to like get something more out of your teammates to be more successful? That's, we were
put it this way,
when
we're saying about the idea of like a hard support role, I know one of the reasons why a lot of people who don't want to play that role don't believe it exists is they think it's the other way around, and it's actually just that you have people who have insane patience and they're willing to have the shit roles, and in doing so like the best example, I'll give you a great one, is fucking CSGO Drop in bloody Furia. This guy just like, well, he must be like a fucking masochist or something, mate. He just like, it's almost like he was telling him, yeah, just take everything, give me nothing, and at the end blame me. You're like, the fuck? Like, bro, you did everything. But in a fucked up way, that's obviously selfish to the other players, but it actually does allow them more resources. So it's never actually been 100% that it has to be that. It could be a mixture of both the psychology and like the role you choose to take, right? Because you are right. If someone was good and they did that role, they will know the occasional time actually they should ask for a flash or say, hey, don't rotate off. Like, we're going to kill them both. Yeah, that's probably true.
I feel like with CS2 now, it's just when we look at the rosters that are at the top, it's not, there's really not, I think Navi is the only exception I see where I just see in 2022, for example, in CSGO, there's several teams that are just punching well above their weight as individuals.
Oh, of
the
course.
main ones being Outsiders and Heroic, who are number 1 and 2 at the end of the year. And it's like, come on, like they didn't really even have any of those players on their teams were really true top 10s in my eyes. Like I think Stound technically might have got it, but it's just like it almost felt like by design of the system he got to be that player, because we see now that he's really not that player, actually, that he's completely self-sustaining. But now it's like so many more of the teams are just driven by really strong hitting individuals, and there's not, I mean, you could make a case it's Navi, but it's like also Bit is playing so well as an individual right now, and he's shooting so crazily hard that even if he makes a wrong move slightly, he's just going to headshot the guy instantly. And I guess the general narrative is we're not getting that team that's which of these teams in the top 10 you would say are like lifted above the sum of their parts because of great team play, great tactics, and honestly, I think
which is why, dude, haven't you noticed? As much as everyone keeps telling me I'm wrong and the Navi players are just this good, no one ever gives them the status, though. Like, by the way, if these numbers are real, can you all start please talking about Bit as like the 7th best player in the world? I've never heard anyone do it, bro. No one tells me JL's some like top 15 player. No one does that. Like, we all give the credit to fucking Blade and Lexi B, because essentially we don't know how they're doing this shit. They're actually the only people who somehow cracked they're like the one that's going counter to this meta I'm talking about, just having fraggers.
Yeah.
And that's actually why I sort of give them credit. I don't know how they're doing it either. It's impossible. Fair play.
I don't know what they're doing. They're cooking something over
Yeah,
there. Like, it's
they're just
working,
good.
like...
They're just geniuses, mate. Right, that was the Maui point. Now my point, my bad point. I purposely picked this as the bad point, is actually the announcement now, through leaks obviously, but it's basically all but confirmed, that NiKo is going to join Falcons. Because, you know, I got triggered earlier about people having those stupid takes about Spinks, when it's like, bro, if you even read the first 2 sentences of the piece, it tells you that's not what happens. It's resolved and they haven't got an issue and they're winning and they're keeping the lineup. Like, it's none of the things you're going crazy. Bro, this is even worse. Because do you know how many people now, because it was announced NiKo's joining Falcons, right? To everyone else who's a moron, Flom, that's where the sentence ends. They go, NiKo's joining Falcon. And it goes, no. The headline always was, NiKo to join Falcons for 2025. But every single fucking day now, the comments are like, Falcons loses. Oh, well, wait till NiKo gets it. No, we're not. It's going to be next year. Like, that won't be happening. They're still going to play this line. And then G2 has to go, what are they going to do without NiKo? He's still going to be here. He's still going to be here. He's still going to play IO. He's still going to play ESA Pro League. He's still going to play the major. Like literally, it's going to be like this every single day until 2025 when he leaves. And so the worst thing is, even though the move itself, I'm putting neither as good, bad, or ugly. We can choose on that one. You could do all sorts of angles. I think the shadow that this is now going to cause over those two teams in the scene is going to be absolutely interminable, but you won't be able to handle it. Like, it's going to get so annoying. It's going to be almost as bad. Like, the secondary version, if you stream, I'm sure you get this all the time, Flom. The secondary version is people going, do you think Simple will come back? What basis would I even have to speculate? Like, I have almost zero info.
Have you been in my chat? Have you been in my
Bro,
chat?
it's because I get it now. I've only done a few weeks. I get it every single day. Every single day. It's like, will he come back? Who will he join? What would happen if he did join? How well would they do? How quickly before he can get... Like, bro, these are actually the most impossible questions to ever answer. So similarly, I think, unfortunately, even though the move is a mega exciting one, by the way, has all sorts of crazy inferences for what might happen with the Saudis, for what might happen with Falcons. Maybe they're going to become like Real Madrid and sign all the best players every year. Maybe Zonic's going to have some crazy stable of talent. That's all cool. We could do separate points on that. But this, the way fans have interpreted this news is going to get so fucking annoying, guys. I'm telling you. It's going to be like this. Every match Falcons loses, every time G2 wins. Every time you're going to have the same convo. Even though the worst thing is, because it can never actually progress till he joins next year. It's in fucking the end of August, guys. Next year is when he joins. Because nothing can change until then. We are going to be stuck in fucking Groundhog's Day NiKo edition. You know, every day you wake up, Maui, and I just say to myself, and the third after, oh, hey, I'm Ned so-and-so. If you've never seen the movie, there's all references. Like, in Groundhog's Day, the same thing happens. It's going to be like that. Every day you wake up, it's Simple coming back to Navi. What about when NiKo, when's he joining? When's he going? Like, next year! It's not going to be this year, please! I can't take it. It's my own personal trigger, but I can't handle it. What do you guys think?
I think, oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Just the one-liner is just what 1 month of Snacks calling does to an MF.
I know.
Okay, that's pretty solid. No, that's good. Honestly, we could just end it right there. I think what's gonna be more annoying is, I mean, it's in line with what you're saying. It's the same exact thing, but it's who's gonna go with NiKo, because we all know somebody's got to be going with NiKo. There's no way he's showing up there and he's not. I mean, most people think, or maybe not. I think, you know, my first thing that comes to my head is, well, is MonteCristo gonna go, right? Because that was the rumor before.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just who's going to join him, right? Like, that's it. You know, you're basically saying like the simple thing, but I think what's more annoying too is when people ask me, is that's where my mind goes, and I'm curious and I'm just waiting to see. So I just feel like I'm stuck in purgatory of like this. I know Falcons is crap. I have to sit here and know that they're going to be changing their roster. They're not going to really probably look any better. Fuck, God forbid they do the thing where we're a dead team and we actually make a run at the end. That's going to be even more fucking annoying. And then you splice in, you know, who's going to be going with them? Is Simple going to be coming back there? Because Falcons is probably the only one that has enough money to make them ever want to leave Navi. So there's really no other logical conclusion. But I have no idea. You have no idea. We don't know where his mental's at, what he wants to do. I mean, that's none of my business, but I am curious from a CS perspective. Is he coming back? That would be so freaking.
Of course.
I mean, people hate on Falcons, totally fair. It's fun to watch that situation just be a complete clusterfuck. I totally agree. But man, if also you see Simple and NiKo on the same team, holy crap.
Bro, that's the worst thing about the Falcons hate. I get if you're hating that this roster isn't good and you thought it was going to be dope. That's totally fine. It's the ones who hate the concept that they exist. Because remember, they're not hating it like Richard Lewis for some human rights. They don't care about that aspect. They just hate the idea. Like, you've got all this money and you're in a bad team. Bro, literally Falcons, if you're a HLTV forum user, Falcons is your dream organization. They are probably going to just jam tens of millions of dollars into their roster over the next 5 to 6 years in a way that no other org can. Like, do you know half the reason why that whole G2 and Vitality thing, saga, stretches out for months and months and months? Because they're not orgs that pay mega bucks. They don't make every player on Vitality the richest player in the world, by the way. They'll make like ZywOo, maybe they'll make like an NiKo or a MonteCristo. That's it. Aside from that, it's like a proper sport. You give the other people smaller contracts. Like, spoiler, I'll guarantee Messi makes nowhere close to what fucking ZywOo makes. We're not playing CS 1.6 where everyone makes the same salary. Like, Falcons actually, if you want to see if you want to see shit like Flom just said, if you want to see Simple and NiKo play together, or like ZywOo and NiKo play, this is the only way it's going to happen, mate. As if some lunatic like the Saudis come in with $1 bazillion and just go like they're doing in football and other sports. What's your price? Tell me, do I need another zero on that? Do you need another? Do you want another player to come with you? Like that. That's the only team, Flom, where that's a real thing. In the other one, it's like, look, well, maybe we can afford him. It turns out they might actually just be like, oh, do you need another guy? We'll arrange it, right, mate? Arrange his contract as well. Like, they could do that. It's actually low key. Once they get past this period of being shit, it could actually be one of the most exciting orgs ever. If you take aside the political shit, obviously.
The dunking on Falcons in general has just kind of gotten kind of tiring, because it's just like, we know they're not that good. We've kind of seen what they are at this point. There's been enough months of them playing that at any point now, it's just sort of like, can X player, can Dupree get 10% better for this little stretch of a tournament? Can they actually incorporate maybe a couple different things to their playing philosophy? And it would be really cool in general to just see them become the Goliath to everybody else's David. When we see a simple NiKo, even a Snappy, who I think a lot of people like to punch down at Snappy right now for what he's doing on Falcons, just because a lot of us pundits rated him very highly for what he did with ENCE, which, by the way, it's not like he's retroactively a bad in-game leader for ENCE when his Falcons team isn't working out anymore, or it's not working out. So I feel like people just have all these reasons to dislike them, and people kind of have the assumed salaries that they're working with, which is also a reason that they're kind of laughing at them and everything like that. But I feel like the better overall narrative, and something that you could actually be more satisfied by, is if a team that is kind of like a Maus can beat a team like a Falcons in the future. Like, that'd be such a cooler matchup for me in general. If it's like, we know that Maus scouted 4 of these players. The only one they brought in was Brolin. They're beating Falcons because they have better teamwork overall, despite the fact that Falcons should on paper have better firepower. That's more compelling to me than just seeing like, oh, they're overpaid and they're not playing well. Like, okay, well, that's that, like, I don't know. It started to lose a lot of its luster as just move on to the next stage. And so I guess the bad point that you initially had, though, about NiKo joining the team is, I mean, this is just, for whatever reason, the bad thing to me is just that, why did it take this long? Like, why did the deal not go through the first time? I mean, like, there was, the shuffling of G2 and everything, and like,
I mean, that's the what if. If you wanted to do a what if, just make that deal go through and sign the contract late last year. Because by the way, then there maybe even as a world where they would have Simple and NiKo. Now that could have been plausible.
Or MonteCristo by now. Yeah, it would be more interesting in general. Because the thing is, what we wanted to see for so long was Snappy playing with NiKo and MonteCristo for Hooksy. Yes. Like, I feel like we were dreaming up this situation. And if it happened, say, 8 months ago, I think we'd all be in a much more interesting place as a narrative builder.
By the way, also, because obviously NiKo himself is mega now, but obviously the most criminal thing about G2 earlier this year was when MonteCristo used to just be like the best player every tournament. But if they didn't make the final, he couldn't win an MVP. Bro, I saw the best graphic to show this, where there was a graphic where it was HLTV, MVPs and EVPs. So what you had was like, I'm going to say Donk was like, I don't know, 3 MVPs, 1 EVP or something. ZywOo was like 2 and 2. MonteCristo had 1 MVP and then 4 EVPs. So what that meant is he basically could have had 5 MVPs, Flom, but his team didn't allow him to actually be able to win them. And so in that scenario, you just realize like, bro, what was this G2? It was just like a mad purgatory stopgap for NiKo and MonteCristo to figure out what they're doing with their careers, but they were never going to win a major. Now you're just both going to fuck up, probably. And by the way, I also think it's almost inferred at this point. Like, he might not even be going with NiKo, but I think it almost, at this point, there's too many rumours about MonteCristo, bro. He's been linked with every Russian team. Also, by the way, all the Russian teams need players right now. I mean, that whole conversation of like, Giro's no MonteCristo, what if we can just get MonteCristo? That's a pretty interesting way to solve that problem. VP looks like a nightmare. They've got loads of mega players. Even Cloud9 needs another player. Like, at this point, it just looks inevitable both those players are leaving. The question just is where, right? But anyway, to bring it all back, like I say, the worst thing ever for CS fans is they will keep asking every day like there's fresh info. As far as I can tell, there's not going to be any fresh info for the rest of the fucking year, which is going to get really tiresome. So I'm already locked in for that. I've already answered my 17th day of is Simple coming back. Where would he join? What team would he, and who can afford him? But I'm like, please, I can't do this anymore. Please, let me out of Guantanamo Bay. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you what the bomb wants. Let me out. Right, what is your ugly point, Flom? It's the rant about the RMR. Yeah, let's go to it. What was the issue with the RMR?
It's a little, my ugly take is basically the North American qualifier is absolute trash, and it's an absolute like personification of, or example rather, of how people view the NA scene. The format of that tournament is trash. The slots that are coming out of it are completely wrong. And I just am getting a bit grand here, but I think it's exactly what's wrong with the scene in general, where you have such a European-centric view, such European-centric tournament organizers. It's not like this problem was new. You have to win 4 games potentially and only lose 2. You can lose 1 best-of-1 and a best-of-3 and be knocked out, and you have to win 4 games. Also, your seeding system is completely scuffed because regional tournaments are an absolute joke. Why? Because I'm the only one running one, so you can't even adjust the regional rankings appropriately whatsoever. The fact that I'm in there is a joke, all right? Like, I'm just going to be honest. But then on top of that, I'm just using this to, like, just show an example. Like, nobody cares. Like, this isn't a new problem. We had this problem last time with the qualifier as well. Oh, no, we've had only a year to change it again and again and again. But nobody cares. Like, it's just a problem sitting there that nobody cares about because it doesn't affect them, because everybody's in Europe and it's just like, yeah, whatever. They'll get their players and teams eventually, but that also hurts us because if we don't get the best teams and players going there, guess what? We get penalized for poor performance now, right? And I don't like doing this because you do have to beat the teams. And as I referenced earlier, I only critique, I'm not going to critique the teams that beat or upset teams that I feel like they, for example, NRG getting the teams that they had to play versus who I had to play, for example, or some of the other teams had to play. Yes, you have to beat who's in front of you. NRG needs to beat those teams, like just plain and simple. However, the format is complete dog. Like, it is horrible, horrible, horrible format. And everybody just ignores it because it's North American Counter-Strike. Who cares? As long as we get our teams and we meet our quota and we ran our tournament, smile, like it's all good here. Like, we don't need to change anything. And I just kind of hate this because I feel like if I don't sit here and complain about it, nobody ever talks about it. It's just completely swept under the rug. Not even, I don't think I've seen a single person like caster, pundit, anybody talk about how awful the qualifier system is. And if this were actually the major and somebody played this, all hell would break loose. There'd be 50 fucking posts. What do you mean somebody loses a best of 1 and 1 BO3 and they're out already? G2 just lost my team. The whole world is burning. But no, North America, nah, it's all good. Like, don't care. It'll be all right. They'll figure it out. They suck anyway. No, we don't need them. Europe CS #1. It's just, it gets tiresome, and I feel like it's a direct reflection of the entire scene and how we treat the North American scene. And yeah, I'm a bit of a homer on that one and biased as hell, but I feel like it's kind of, I don't even know how you'd argue against it. I don't know how you could ever look at that situation and feel like it's good.
I'm just looking at the difference between the Copenhagen closed qualifier for North America and now the perfect world one. And it's just strange that, I mean, because now Valve has those just safeguarded spots based off of what you've done through the previous season. It used to be the closed qualifier sent 8 out of the 16 teams to the RMR. Now it's sending 4 of the 16 teams. And it just has made it's and to the benefit of the system, I guess it's like, okay, cool. It's safeguarded spots for Liquid, Furia, Complexity, 9Z, Pain, MIBR, M80, who we kind of wanted at this RMR anyways. Yes. But it has actually made this closed qualifier in effect very awkward. Because like you're saying, it's a Swiss system where you're playing BO1s until the advancement/elimination game. But then also, if you even win 3 games like Fluffy, Aimers, and Legacy did, you have to play a tiebreaker game on top of that. And you kind of would just think they would use like a seeded double elim bracket here instead of
anything.
What this is. Yeah.
Which they do in Asia, by the way. Like, they do this in other regions.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, so they're literally just like, hey, yeah, we know that this system is messed up for other regions, so we changed it. But like, hey, for you guys, like, it's just kind of a little weird, man. We're just gonna leave it completely scuffed, and that's just my issue. Is it just always like, well, because it's North American Counter-Strike, like, all good, doesn't matter.
I also just am still of the opinion that you really don't need to have BO1s. Like, what is that? How much time is that saving people when it's BO3, MR12 can also be very fast now. So I'm not really. Generally, I just don't like seeing BO1s in CS2 or under MR12 at all.
I don't have any huge take on this one. I'm not from NA too. I actually think, I will say, I agree with you. The reason why no one gives a fuck, Flom, is because right now, there isn't actually like a top 5 team that's NA that could lose in this scenario and get fucked over. Like, even Team Liquid and Col are just kind of like good, but not amazing. So I don't think actually people would cry themselves to sleep if one of them even failed to make the major. I think it would be a travesty. But essentially, I think the problem goes when people don't care, the way they're going to dismiss it is they're going to go, well, all the other teams suck. So if you're good, you should get through anyway. And by the way, which is literally the logic they use for Team Liquid, even though if you saw that RMR, what actually happened was Liquid and Col played in the last match. Meanwhile, they could have literally just drawn a whole bunch of other teams, and they would have just beaten those teams almost certainly and both been at the major. And by the way, that was even worse because that for real probably made Liquid spend millions of dollars more and not get millions of dollars from the stickers that basically destroyed an entire super team. Because if you remember, by the end, that team was at the performance level that we already praised Astralis for, and neither team ever did anything. Neither team bloody won a tournament or was in a final, but it was just too late. They'd been cooked for so long, then they failed the Katowice quad. It was just too late at that point. But the RMR was like the first thing that the fuse being lit to blow that whole team up. So I do think, unfortunately, people just don't care. But actually, this is some sort of an NA problem. You are right, bro. And here's why I know this. Because I was looking this up now. Thankfully for this RMR, finally it's different. What is this obsession with running Swiss systems with 4 rounds? What? Yeah. They have 5. Like, why has that been done like 2 or 3 times now? So that like some of the results, it just makes totally alien. Because if you don't know, guys, you're getting like eliminated on a 2-2 and it's like, but I haven't lost 3 times. Like, what? It's like, yeah, but sorry, you lost 2 times. Like, again, can't we just play 1 extra round? Like, what are you even skimping on at that point in time? You know, that's one of those examples of where, like, that would not fly in Europe, I'm telling you right now. And then I'll throw one more thing
online, man.
Yeah, one last thing I'll throw in as well. The real reason why ESL probably to this day are the best TO is also because at all levels, they're amazing. Like, if you don't know, their admins are the people who found out all the cheats and the coach exploits. So, like, they're the people of the best admins in the business. And one thing they are very good at, despite complaints to the opposite, is they're fucking amazing at running online tournaments and qualifiers. Like, they're really slick and efficient. And I feel like the difference is when these massive teams in Europe complain, people like ESL fucking jump to it and start fixing things and figuring out what's wrong and then having like a meeting with all the player team orgs. Like, well, do we all agree to change this and can we do this ruling here? In the NA one, like I say, I think people just do the thing of like, well, if you were good, wouldn't you have won? It's like, well, we have to make it so that you want it the opposite. You want it to be like, if I'm good, but I'm also just not unlucky with who I draw, for fuck's sake. Because that whole thing of you only beat who you play, again, that's like what you're saying about upsets, bro. We don't blame the team that beats them. We have to blame whoever designed this tournament, though. Whereas I say, Col can play Team Liquid in the last round. Meanwhile, some other rando team plays, like probably Legacy or someone played some fucking nobody in the same position to qualify. Like, I do think that part does seem to be, it's like, you're right, it's not just this major, man. This is like 2 or 3, it's basically, isn't it? Basically everything after the online era. We've had these scuffed ass RMRs every time.
Yep, exactly. And this is what I mean. This is why it's ugly as hell to me, because just no one gives a fuck. Like, it's just so frustrating. And then I feel like a broken record. Like, it's just a big personal thing for me, because if I'm not sitting there crying the entire fucking time, no one cares. Like, literally, Nobody cares. Even if the teams complain, it's just like, energy, whatever, man. We haven't even seen them at a tournament. Like, what are they doing? They have a team? They're just a bunch of washed tier 2 pros now, like whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's, meanwhile, they had to play Nouns, which regionally speaking, that's who they practice against all the time. And one of they're going to be the biggest ones. They lose that. Okay, fair. Then they played Legacy. Like, dude, they're also really, like, it's not like some pushover team that's like bad. And then if you pull up somebody else's, like, bro, they had to play me. They had to play me. They had to play some team that I lost to, where genuinely, it's just so scuffed, man. It's so scuffed. But nobody cares. Nobody cares.
You're fighting a good fight, Flom. You are doing.
Trying.
Right. What is your ugly
NA
point,
strongest
Maui?
soldier.
What is your ugly point?
My ugly point is.
And also, to be fair, you have to realize this is the downside of like different statuses. If someone in Europe complains, some super famous streamer or some like fucking pro player, they're like, "Oh my god, fucking Gel's complaining." In your case, they're just like, "What? Gate rights talking American friends upset." Okay. Oh shit, does he actually play? All right, my bad. They just don't care so much. That's all. Just don't care so much. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Go on.
So my ugly point is just this. It's just this whole debacle with this PARIVISION drama where they were playing and then they qualified for the RMR, but then they actually had their coach behind them, Finn, who had a outstanding ban from ESIC. He was permanently banned by Valve, but then unbeknownst to practically anybody on the planet, he actually had sent in an appeal earlier to get overturned the ESIC decision for all of the demerits that he accumulated because he used the coaching bug. And they didn't really explain it that well. I read the whole thing for ESIC and everything that they said about Finn, and it kind of just said that there was evidence. And I feel like there's a lot of ways you could take that where ESIC just kind of bends over and lets somebody just fuck them out of there. Like they just let anybody just kick their ass out of there. So I feel like the whole back and forth and the lack of clarity through all of this decision making is like, at this point, I almost would just go as far to say, fuck it, just revoke all of the ESIC bans, because anybody that even gets a lawyer worth $5 and some fucking pocket change is gonna be good enough to make ESIC stand down on any of the rulings that they had. And the fact that Valve actually is standing by ESIC's system of demerits and then just saying, okay, if it gets retroactively appealed and lifted, then it's fine now. I just feel like what's the point of this? What was the point of this whole coaching bug debacle? I feel like was completely pointless. If every single coach, even ones that were permanently banned because they had so many marks against them, are now just like, oh, I went to ESIC with a lawyer and now it's cool. It's just all pointless. It's just so pointless. And the fact that there was even, like, I almost just feel bad for teams like Koi and Monty and Bleed, who thought, oh, cool, we have another chance now. And then, oh, wait, like, we should have known about this thing 3 months ago that was okay. And now we know about it finally. Like, it was just so messy. And I don't actually really even blame, I don't even know who to blame in this one. I don't really blame Perfect World, because how were they supposed to know? In some ways, I don't know if I should blame Valve for just going by the book of what ESIC is doing, but I mostly just blame ESIC because I feel like the whole reason we're in this situation at all is like, can't there just be a governing body that just stands their ground on this stuff? And why can't Valve do it too, I guess? That's my big complaint about this whole situation.
Okay.
ESIC's worthless. I mean, it's just a joke at this point. There's no sugarcoating it. We don't need to be nice to ESIC at this point. They like, what have they done? Like genuinely, what have they done? They didn't even find the coach bug. Thorin talked about it earlier. They didn't do shit. Yep. Somebody else did all the work for them. And then basically they have zero teeth. What is the point of a watchdog that can't do anything that exists in the scene? You're literally worthless. I mean, and all you do is make situations more complicated. You're not helping in any scenario. You make things so convoluted that you basically get the hopes up of certain teams in the biggest tournament of their fucking careers potentially, and you just sit there and you do nothing. And then you also have the gall to put out statements like you didn't do anything wrong and like it's not your job. Like that was the tone, is like they're like, yeah, handled this, by the way, but we didn't really feel that. What do you mean you didn't feel the need to tell anybody about? What are you doing? If your job is not to announce when people are getting unbanned and banned, what do you actually exist for? Why? No, the answer is you're embarrassed because somebody got a lawyer, knocked on your door and said, no, you can't ban me. They said, oh, sorry, that won't happen again, sir. We actually are just completely useless. Like, have a great day. And then you didn't have any, you didn't even want to own up to it. Why? Because it's absolutely embarrassing what you're doing. And genuinely, I will say this, Valve should they need to take control of this. There are things where I'm completely okay with Valve being hands off. I defend them a lot for how they approach the scene when it comes to handling situations and letting the scene be the scene. I think it really has done a lot of good for Counter-Strike. Sure, I'd like to see more involvement, maybe more like prize money, sticker money, whatever, get distributed better. But at the end of the day, the big thing, they need to be the watchdog of their own tournament system. If they're not, there's no teeth to this, because and to defend ESIC a little bit, I just don't think they have the no means. They don't have any sort of like backing behind them. They're over there trying to broker deals to get money. It's why it has to be Valve, because it's not like you can have a tournament organizer do it and somebody booting it up on their own. If me and Maui went out tomorrow and wanted to make our own version of ESIC that was actually relevant, who the hell is going to give us money and for what? And then if they give us money, the most likely people would be like tournament organizers, but then you're immediately going to have bias, which you're now, once again, you're not doing a good job. So it has to be Valve. There's no like tiptoeing around it. Valve has to step up and actually be the watchdog of their own game. And ESIC is completely useless, and it doesn't do anything positive for the scene whatsoever. If we just had admins and you just banned those coaches and didn't try to make some legal demerit system out of it, we wouldn't even be having this conversation, because they'd just be banned. Sometimes, I miss the old ESEA days where you did something stupid and you just got perma-banned. I don't want
no appeal. You don't even have to know why you just banned. Yeah, get the fuck out.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's definitely a lot of flaws with that system.
Oh, of course.
But it cleans up so much of the trash.
Yes.
We just let so much trash linger in the scene because everybody's tiptoeing around. It's like, no, you're a piece of trash. Get out. You're a piece of trash. Get out. And nobody does that. Faceit doesn't even do that for Faceit puggers, let alone fucking coaches manipulating players, coach bugging, doing horrific things. They're just like, nah, you got a lawyer, all good, welcome back to the scene, you look great, did you get a new haircut, really pleasure doing business with you, we didn't mean anything we said, have a great day. ESIC's useless. Valve, step up your game. You're just completely just dropping the ball here.
Even though I know no one ever really will. The sad thing about these talk shows is they're just entertainment for today. They come and they go. No one's really revisiting old episodes unless you're a super fan of a person who was a guest. So sadly, no one ever is going to go and watch the old By the Numbers episodes. But one of the angles that aged the best was I was probably the most skeptical person about ESIC from day one they entered the scene. And I used to just ask Richard, in the style of a journalist, the naive questions, which I eventually found the answers to, which were along these lines of well, Richard, how will they ever enforce it? What will happen, for example, if someone just says, a tournament organizer, I don't acknowledge ESIC. That was a thing. Remember, ESIC was trying to negotiate with people to get to. I made all these devil's advocate, what if this happened? What if that? And basically it all came to pass, sadly. In fact, even worse, because I at least thought we'd end up with what seemed like the middle ground of because though people like ESL and Blast have all agreed they're going to be part of this, it means though, if you do get the ban, we're going to say you can't play in our ESL major because you've got an ESIC ban. That all looked like, there's some baseline. If you do something really bad, you can get fucked. Well, the worst thing about that is that later on, it turned out, as people like Hunter showed us, if you just got a lawyer involved, you never had to be banned at all. So the worst part is, do you know the actual dumbest people were? It's people like Gary from Furia, who actually didn't attend majors and just sat there well, what can I do, guys? I'm in prison. And then the whole time it turned out, no, actually, essentially, here's the analogy. ESIC was just a scarecrow. It only works if you don't know it's not actually a guy. If you think, this guy over there is watching the field, well then, shit. But the second someone, in this analogy, this is like if crows could talk and they were like, actually, that's just like a fucking stick with a quote on it. And then they all flew up and pecked and went, well, shit, why are we scared of this? Time to get all the crops out the field, boys. There's no one watching us here. And at this point, the only people who get wrecked by ESIC are the people who don't know what I just said, who aren't actually aware That they have no teeth, they have no power, they have no way to enforce it. And the problem is, the only people who can enforce it ultimately are actually Valve. Like, the difference is, TOs like ESL and Blast are in a very weird spot where, cause in other games, it's actually the game dev that does that job. They have the power and the perceived authority. ESL only has the authority over their tournaments. And even then, by the way, they could probably get fucked up by certain legal actions based on how you ban people. So I think when ESIC came along, that's why those orgs wanted to work with ESIC. They were like, oh, you're going to take this off our hands and make it look like you're the police. Go ahead, Dick. I mean, yeah. What do you need? 20K? Yeah, go ahead. Or we support this initiative. Because I don't want to be the one getting blamed when these guys all get unbanned and they do the legal shit. So that's mad in itself. And then also, I do think it's actually fucking mental that we're in a situation where even the punishments are just whack. Like, the punishment, by the way, sounded totally legit to me. You had a banned coach in the room. And you had to, by the way, even if he wasn't banned, you still had an extra person in the room. You've already violated the rule. I want to go one further the other way, Flom. The sad thing I think about the people having this, because I'll shade one other detail in that makes it a bit trickier. The reason why I know only Valve can do this is because, bro, you know everyone on Reddit who get every legal case wrong, memed on Yampy, the player who plays in Valorant now, who used to wanted to play for ENCE, if you remember. He was going to be on OG, and famously he had like a VAC ban from when he was like 12 or something, that someone else played on the account or whatever. But apparently it wasn't even the meme, it was like real. Like, that's really what happened when he was like 12 years old at a LAN or something. You know, he like bought an account off someone, or someone used his account, right? When he did that legal case, and every person on Reddit was like, lol, he's never going to win this. I've heard that case is actually why people like Yimfat, who's like Sergey's brother, why they can now play. They had a ban as well. I think Torji maybe. There's a couple of mad bans like that. Then, by the way, Yampy himself could come back. He just doesn't choose to because he's in Valorant now. He had success there. So I actually think that even implies maybe even Valve could be moved if you do the right deal. But the difference is, think of that case. In that case, what you're basically arguing if you're Yampy is, bro, we haven't even proven it was me that did the cheat. Also, it was when I was 12. I wasn't even a fucking old, like an adult. And then thirdly, you're denying me like a livelihood, basically. Like, I've got all these people to say I played at ENCE. I could be a pro player. And the only reason I can't be is you've created a draconian rule, which isn't even a legal thing. You've just decided I can't be, right? That is at least plausible. You could fight back against it. I don't think you'd be able to have a legal case against Valve, like, but I'm cheating in your game and doing all these viral, I think that wouldn't fly. So I think Valve could actually enforce this tomorrow. And when I said I want to go one harsher, bro, I'm sick of the fact that because the ESLs are somewhat beholden to teams, like, spoiler, when I'm giving this example, you'll know where I'm going. ESL pretty much has to have G2 attend their events. G2 is probably the biggest Western esports org. Like, they've got NiKo, they've got MonteCristo, bro, they've got everyone. Like, you don't want to have to ban that team or ever put them in a position where they fuck with you. So that's the reason why when Taz openly cheated on camera, on stage, all we're doing is giving him a warning. Bro, I'd go harsher. You forfeit that half. There you go, dickhead. You literally cheated on camera. You just forfeit the whole half. I'll tell you what, bro. I don't care how much complaining. That would never happen ever again in professional Counter-Strike. Because that example, if you never saw the video, wasn't like, you know, it slipped his mind and he accidentally pointed. Bro, he looks at the IGL and points to a part of a piece of paper that presumably has the strat on, like, do this strat. And it's only because the camera was right in his face that got caught, by the way. So that even implies, by the way, one, he could have done it more than once. And two, would he have gotten away with it if it wasn't on camera? So I think on that one, where the rule is you're allowed to do that once and then they give you a warning. Bro, if you understand the way loopholes work, what you're saying then is if I'm on the last half of the last map of the final, I should just do it. I get a freebie. For free, I can just cheat. So I actually think in general, I agree with the whole thing, but I want to go harsher. I wish there was a world where if you're Valve and you've got a rule like this, like that coach cheated in the past and you can't have extra people in a room. Do you had the coach cheating who was there and you had the extra person? Right, you're banned from the qualifier. Let's rerun that spot. Let's do it. That's easy because, again, you actually want it to be harsh so people don't even fuck around at that point in time. The idea that there's a way to wriggle out of it. And then lastly, just to make it humorous, I'll just say this. Why at this point in time, specifically for, we were banging on NA teams with the RMR, why in CIS teams do we actually need like a fucking 360-degree camera just to know what's in the room? I feel like I'm watching fucking Minority Report here or something. It's like little things like scanning the whole, what are we doing here? Like in a CIS qualifier, right? I can't even just have like player cams and go, oh look, they're playing. I have to look who's hiding in the cupboard, fucking whispering into a tin can with a piece of string on connected to the fucking coach it. What are we doing at this point? Why are you all cheating? It's like that meme I did where it was like a control center of like a TV producer. And my joke was like CIS teams and RMRs in the online era. Because remember, like every fucker had like looking up here like this other monitor, like with the stock prices in the fucking mini map on it. Like these cunts are just cheating on like a next level angle. Like they're not even hiding it. There's just people in the room, bro. Like at least in here they do like a radar hack and hide it or something. And then here the guys just stood there like, hey, just do that. Oh shit, I'm not supposed to do that. Like throwing his voice around the room or something. It's just fucking whack. It's so whack, voice. I can't handle how bad it is. Oh yeah, and lastly, I'll just say shout out to Note because he has the greatest meme ever about ESIG. When you knew that NA match fixing shit would never come out, he did that meme of the interstellar planet where time is slower, and it just says, like on the first panel, it says, on this planet, 1 hour is 7 years back on Earth. And then the guy just goes, we will wait here for the ESIG NA match fixing reports. You know,
yeah, we got the FBI involved, guys. Don't worry.
Well done. Well done. That is quality memery. That is top-notch memery. Right, okay, that's it. I'll move on now. The last point of the show. This one's actually a wide-up one, and crucially, Flom can get involved in this one. It's actually your scene, which I always point out to meme on people. Yeah, I used to think your scene was called North America. I even used to naively, Flom, when I went to your events, think it was all about the USA because of a certain chance. I know it's now we've expanded it. It's just America's. Just you know what? There's no northern. Just draw a line on the whole edge of that giant continent. Just the whole thing. We're taking that now, boys. So, okay, if we're doing that, I will say this. I actually think in Brazilian CS, this is why I put it in ugly, everyone focuses too much on Furia, right? So the whole topic of every narrative in Brazilian CS goes like this. Queserato should leave. He's wasting his time there. And Furia doesn't have a good lineup. Like, they should disband. They should get... Bro, the worst thing is, this is why I'm putting it as ugly. That's all true. That is actually probably the bottleneck to Brazilian CS. They've got Queserato, they've got Yuri, they've got the good players, they've got the money, seemingly, and they don't sign the other players. But, bro, once you get past that, the reason that this is an ugly point is, bro, Brazilian CS outside of Fury is fire. What are we talking about? Like, for real, you not only actually for real have, like, 3 or 4 teams, which, by the way, are on, like, the cusp of, like, being in a major or doing something like an upset at an event. But if you actually were to take the talent, even outside of Furia, mate, you could make, like, look, there's certain roles you'd struggle with. The obvious one for me is IGL. But, bro, aside from that, you could make, like, 2 or 3 very legit teams. Like, I think MIBR's, like, a team without an IGL. I think Paint's a team with an IGL and without the stars. Like, then you go and look at all the... fucking hell, mate, it never stops. Like, there's some really fucking good... I think the actual talent base in South America is fucking mad underrated, mate. Brazil looks like it has loads of talent. They're just not in the top team. They're not in Furia. And so people don't know they exist. Because I've just been watching this Paint team play, mate. Like, they are way better than they should be. But I watch them, I'm like... Where are they play? What player here is going to be top 10? None. Then I look at MIPR, it's like the Insanity guys, and say, where's his IGL? Where's, you know, like, not, they're all mixed teams. But I actually think the talent level is really underrated, bro. What do you think?
I think South America is insane. I think the problem that, I mean, we'll say South America. It is mostly Brazil, but we'll say South America. Like, the problem they have is they're suffering from success. They actually have such a strong regional tournament system, and they actually have so much interest in their organizations that they can justify having so many teams, which has completely spread out the talent and created the problem that you basically just alluded to in your very own opening. You got Big Uzera on the team because I think the rumor, or I think he might have stated it, was he wanted to basically be like, he's got the Elish thing. He doesn't really want to do the international. I want to live in Europe.
Yeah, I asked him. He actually did say he has that offers. He just said he doesn't take them, which is like, okay, yeah, exactly. Fair enough.
So like, yeah, that's one issue. And he's, he's undeniably, I don't think there's really a better idea on the Brazilian scene. Yeah. The other role that they're completely missing is op, and the op role, and that's why, critique Fallen all you want, but that's why he's in Fury is really because, one, Big Uzera isn't going there, and 2, they don't really have an op or IGL where you could justify even moving Fallen out of there, because you get one or the other, and then that means you have to replace somebody else on Furia, which you could probably do, but it's you're trying to replace 2 roles for one. It becomes very complicated. So I agree. I think South American CS gets overlooked a lot because, I mean, if you're just not watching like the regional streams, there's no way you'd really know. And then, which is also, let me just bring this back to North American Pro League was freaking sick because they played in the North American Pro League, and sure, yes, that was great for NACS too, and it really helped basically build up the entire scene because the Brazilians were so freaking good and they had such great work ethic when they came here. It basically lit a fire under everybody's ass. And But the problem is, you don't have like a Western wouldn't be the right word, but you know what I mean. You don't have any Americans or like English speaking casters that are covering the games on a consistent basis where you'd really be able to see them, whether they're European, American, whatever. And so you have a disconnect, right? They're basically isolated.
Mate, you know that tournament? Which was it? Was it the one called like Get Rio or something? The one where it was like all the sub team.
Yeah.
Bro, when I watched that, I actually watched some of those games. I was like, how is this not like a famous tournament everyone's watching? Like, this is better than some like ESL Challenger events, mate. This is actually legit.
And then the problem though is everybody from that scene is watching and supporting. So you have so many orgs, and then everybody gets spread out, right? That's sure. You have the pieces that are all there. You have the talent. It's just hard to consolidate all of it because everybody wants to get paid, man. Everybody wants to live out their dream, and you can't it's hard. The only team that could pull people is Furia, but the roles that they need are actually the ones that are basically missing. Or for Bigu's there, you can't get him because he doesn't want to move. Basically, he doesn't want to live in Europe. So I agree with you. I think there's loads of talent there. I think people constantly overlook it just because there's not really many English versions of the streams that are popular. They usually exist but are much smaller, and because of that you have this disconnect, and the only time you get to see them is the Americas during the major, and they actually benefited the North American scene once again there because they got more overall slots, even though we did end up losing a legend spot. So the South America is absolutely unreal.
Like, dude, if you actually think about it, technically, after Russia, they're probably actually the second best CS country at the moment. Like, think how many teams you can go deep with on Brazil. Like, remember, I didn't even mention Imperial, fucking, the Legacy team still exists. Like, if you don't know, Henny and Cold Zero playing Red Canids now, guys. Like, it's actually ridiculous how many teams they've got. They've got like 5-6 teams.
Yeah. They roll deep, and it's not just like one player like carrying each roster. There's usually 2 or 3, like you said.
Yes.
They really are just missing that IGL aspect to really.
No, mate. I actually did a video last year like this when at the beginning of CS2. I did like, what would my Brazilian super team be? And I actually came to the same conclusion. I came to the conclusion IGL and AWP just missing the scene. But aside from that, you've got unironically like 30 riflers that could be in these teams. Like, they're really good. It's just that you've only got that role, unfortunately.
And they're so aggressive, and they like just create so much space. Like, their style, dude, it's like when you see Insanity, for example, just have a game on MIBR. Holy crap, that guy is no pun. He is. I've played against him. I've played against him in the server. I know how fast he kills you. It basically felt the same as when I played Zyro in FPL. That man just instantaneously, they just appear on your screen and you're just gone.
Yes.
The whole style that we used to remark on for Brazilian teams, other than the LGSK team, which was more, I'd say, tactical, slower, based on the setup and everything like that, is that they were super aggressive. So it actually would make a lot of sense that the way that they play CS2 just translates better, because that's basically what we've been saying, is that the more active you are, the more disruptive you are, the better you're going to be in this game. And Pain, I really held out a lot for seeing this team against true European opposition before I really made a strong claim about them. But after recently seeing them take down Cloud9, Bet-Boom, Heroic, stuff like that, I'm starting to be like, okay. And they took a map off of Mouse, which I watched yesterday, and that was just like, okay, this team is legitimately very good right now. And actually, I remember the Brazilian super team you had, Thorin, like, you would change that this year, like, already, because some of the people on Pain are so good quickly. Like, at this point now, I didn't rate him because his major was pretty bad and everything I saw of him was kind of mediocre, but NQZ has been one of the better players for Pain for me now as their opper. Snow, I would just, here's another hot take. Snow's better than Skulls. There, done. Like, he's flat out better, and he's been playing for less time in tier 1 already, and I'd say that he's been so good in these anchor positions. So I feel like there's so much to take from in terms of South American, and we didn't even really talk about the fact that, like, 9Z is Argentinian, like, it's kind of insane that it's almost just like by proxy of them being close to Brazil and probably having a lot of great practice partners in that area. They've also come up and actually surpassed, in terms of world ranking, a lot of the Brazilian teams, which to me is one of the craziest stories ever. So there's so much to be excited about in that region. And right now, this is almost just like, just by the fact that PGL decided to actually have an event in Buenos Aires to recognize that region as an area that's coming up, Argentina in general, and like they have a couple of weird events in like places where I was like, what, the Kazakhstan event? Either way, the fact that they have one in Argentina now, I feel like there's something going on over there too. So it's cool that they're actually throwing them a bone, putting a real tier 1 live event in person, which will then inspire more people in that region, because I don't feel like there's any, well, the barrier to entry is obviously having a computer and having good internet, but beyond that, I feel like places like Buenos Aires make sense for this kind of stuff, because their average GDP is decent enough that this is like now a more of a middle class thing to have that, as opposed to like, I think South America's catching up very quickly for a lot of different reasons, socioeconomic, and the fact that they just flat out have good teams.
I'd love to go to Argentina. PGL, can you, if you watch this, can you send me out? I'll co-stream it live from there. That'd be sick. That was the first thing I mentioned when I saw the list. I was like, Argentina? I was like, I'm down to go. Let's go.